On an unusually peaceful day in the city of Alia, everything seemed calm on the surface. Suddenly, a red-haired girl appeared and declared that she had finally found the protagonist. Without hesitation, she grabbed his arm and insisted they needed to leave at once. Moments later, she continued to urge him to hurry. Kai, already exhausted by her energy, could only let out a long, tired sigh. A little later, inside a lively tavern, a similar scene unfolded once more. This time, a girl in a blue cloak approached him, declaring that she had finally found him. With a smooth and inviting tone, she urged him to come with her to her estate. Kai, clearly fed up with the repeated pattern, took a deep breath and quickly refused, explaining that he was busy today. This left the blonde girl visibly baffled. Clinging tightly to his arm, she complained and asked why he couldn't come when she was free. On the verge of tears, she pleaded with him to come play with her. Completely lost, the young protagonist wondered how his life had come to this point. To understand, we must go back a bit further, to the heart of a dark forest, where two bandits first pulled him into this chaos. Feeling slightly tense, Kai quickly complied with the men's demands. As they settled in for the night, the bandits ordered him to keep watch, aware that the ransom for the captives was highly valuable. As a final command, the leader instructed him that if the prisoners made any noise, he was to beat them into silence. However, in his mind, Kai already understood that the captives lacked the strength even to scream. Alone in the darkness, he reflected on the absurdity of his situation. Frustrated, he held his head in his hands, desperately trying to comprehend how everything had gone so wrong. Then, a memory surfaced. He recalled attempting to save someone before being struck by a truck, yet, for some unfathomable reason, he had later opened his eyes in this strange world. As he gazed up at the night sky, the truth gradually dawned on him. He recognized this world all too well. Confronted with the evidence, Kai understood that he had somehow found himself inside the fantasy game he had been playing just days before. Standing near the bandits' camp, he felt a wave of dread wash over him as he realized he had reincarnated right in the midst of the villains. A cold shiver ran down his spine as he cursed his terrible luck. At that moment, a noise from the nearby cart caught his attention. As he moved closer, he discovered an iron cage and froze in shock. Inside, the supposed hostages were actually 3 girls trapped in darkness. Recalling the game's story, Kai realized that every villain involved in this incident was fated to be eliminated. Being here among them could only spell disaster. Without wasting a moment, he determined that the best course of action was to escape immediately. As he searched his pockets, he discovered a map and some money that would aid him on his journey. After reviewing the routes, he concluded that leaving should be feasible without too much difficulty. Before leaving, he glanced back one last time. Then, moving carefully and quietly, he unlocked the iron cage. In a low voice, he urged the captives to escape with him. Inside the cage, the 3 frightened girls stared at him, one of them looking especially sick and fragile. Filled with suspicion, the red-haired girl asked if he was serious about the escape. With a sharp glare, she accused him of attempting to trick them with a cruel joke. The white-haired girl echoed her tone, demanding to know why they should trust him after everything that had transpired. Kai fell silent for a moment, desperately searching for a convincing answer. Seizing on his hesitation, the redhead pointed out that he clearly had nothing to say and declared that his little act had already failed. Thinking quickly, Kai spun a lie, claiming he had infiltrated the enemy group and apologized for arriving late to rescue them. Even as he told such an outrageous and shameless story, he understood that earning their trust in that moment mattered more than anything else. Urgently, he pressed them, warning that if they were caught now, it would be the end for him. The red-haired girl revealed that her leg was badly injured, leaving her unable to run. The platinum blonde admitted she was completely blind. To make matters worse, the youngest blonde girl, Remy, lay unconscious and sick on the floor. With a tone of despair, the redhead stated that even if they managed to escape, they would only meet their end somewhere along the way. She added that just learning he was not actually their enemy was enough for her to feel grateful. Hearing this, Kai's heart grew heavy. At that moment, the little blonde girl let out a weak groan and lifted a trembling hand. In a feeble voice, she begged for help and pleaded to be saved. The instant Kai heard her, his entire expression changed. Clenching his fist, he declared firmly that he would not abandon any of them. He promised to carry those who could not walk and insisted that fleeing offered a better chance than waiting there to die. Startled by his determination, the girls questioned what he thought he was doing. With the map in hand, Kai assured them that he was familiar with the surrounding area and that everything would be fine. Once he made up his mind, he instructed the other 2 to hold on tightly, then hoisted all 3 of them up and began running through the dark forest. As he ran, he quickly realized that this body was much stronger and sturdier than the one he had in his previous life. He shook off that thought and concentrated solely on escaping. Relieved that no one appeared to be chasing them yet, he pressed on. As he moved, he mentally retraced the route marked on the map he had studied earlier. There it was, the city of Aldea, just as he had named it in the game. That small confirmation boosted his confidence even further. Without slowing down, he guided the group along the correct path until they eventually arrived at a hidden treehouse. At that moment, he quietly celebrated their successful escape. Curious, the blind girl asked where they had ended up. With a faint smile, Kai revealed that it was a secret hideout he had designed himself in the game. Standing before a magically sealed door, he struggled to recall the password. He asked the girls to wait for a moment and stepped forward toward the entrance. Placing his hand on the magical seal, he entered the keyword he had once used in the game. Suddenly, the door illuminated with a blue glow and swung open, granting them safe passage inside. Once they entered, he confessed that he hadn't truly expected this place to exist in reality. He gently laid the little blonde girl down on a bed so she could rest. The redhead, clearly taken aback, remarked that he was certainly no ordinary spy or agent. She noted that having a treehouse like this, hidden in such a location, made no sense otherwise. Inwardly, Kai agreed, but he dismissed it, claiming it was nothing special. Concerned, the red-haired girl quickly asked if Remy would be all right, and the atmosphere in the room grew tense. Kai suddenly remembered that he might have left useful items stored here. At that moment, the injured girl asked if there was anything to eat. As Kai opened a wooden chest, he muttered to himself while searching for something usable. Fortunately, the system functioned just as it had in the game, and several potions were still preserved inside. Holding up the bottles, he announced that he had found medicine. However, the redhead immediately scolded him, insisting that an ordinary potion would never save someone in such a weakened state. Calmly, Kai handed her a glowing purple vial instead. Without any concern, he explained that it was not a typical medicine and that it should be effective. The redhead's eyes widened the moment she saw its color. At the same time, Kai recognized that the item was quite rare and recalled that he had never cluttered his inventory with useless junk. In the game, this potion had cured nearly everything, from injuries to poison, and it had been incredibly difficult to create. With the vial in their hands, the two girls were left utterly stunned. Kai vaguely recalled that he still had over 100 of them stored away, which meant he could likely become rich just by selling a few. Unable to believe it, the red-haired girl questioned who he truly was to possess something so valuable. Kai let out a sigh, accompanied by a hint of a smirk. In a flat tone, he advised them not to ask any more questions, for everyone's sake. Immediately after that, he instructed the other two girls to drink the potion as well. Turning away, he jokingly remarked that he had no desire to carry 3 people around. Even so, the platinum blonde still found it hard to believe that the legendary universal elixir was truly in front of her. Kai handed her another vial and confirmed that he had one for her too. After taking a sip, the blind girl was astonished by the effect and could hardly believe what had happened. Standing beside the bed, Kai praised the little blonde girl's toughness and carefully administered the potion to her as well. Little by little, the glowing liquid flowed down the throat of the unconscious girl. In the next moment, her body radiated a bright light, confirming that the cure had worked. Impressed by the magic's practical and immediate effect, Kai let out a sigh of relief. When Remy slowly opened her eyes, she expressed her gratitude in a weak, trembling voice. Gently, he advised her to continue resting, explaining that while the potion could heal her body, it could not alleviate the exhaustion of her mind. As the room gradually dimmed and the magical glow faded, Kai picked up the empty bottles and glanced at the others. To his surprise, both the red-haired girl and the platinum blonde were already standing, completely healed. Looking at the prophetess, Kai began to envision the kind of reward he might demand once he safely returned them home. That thought was interrupted when the two girls burst into tears of joy at being able to walk and see again. Awkwardly, he remarked that he had no idea how long they had been suffering. Out of respect, he gave them space to absorb the miracle. The next day, once things had calmed down, their conversation resumed and Kai learned that they had originally been kidnapped in the city of Aldea. He quickly noted that they were now more than 2 cities away from their location. Scratching his head, he acknowledged that getting them back would take quite some time. Irritated, the redhead retorted that he should discuss the issue with his fellow bandits, as they were the ones responsible for the entire mess. Frustrated, Kai inquired if any of them had knowledge of teleportation magic. The redhead replied that if any of them could escape, they would have done so long ago. Embarrassed, Kai let out a weak laugh and conceded that her logic was flawless. As he secretly checked his own status, he lamented that he had ended up in the body of a low-rank hunter with nothing remarkable about him, rather than in the overpowered character he had once controlled. While studying the map, the Platinum Blonde explained that throughout history, only one person had ever been capable of using teleportation magic, hiding his disappointment. Kai agreed and quickly shifted the conversation. He looked at the group and asked how everyone was feeling that day. With a gentle smile, the Platinum Blonde thanked him and shared that she was still adjusting to the miracle of seeing again. A little embarrassed, the red-haired girl admitted that her leg had completely healed and offered him a heartfelt thank you. In the next breath, the haughty girl insisted that he stop speaking to her so casually and introduced herself as the noble Karen. Following her lead, the Platinum Blonde introduced herself as Nina. Shortly after, they all reaffirmed that the sleeping blonde girl's name was Remy. With sweat trickling down his face, Kai felt a surge of panic as he struggled to keep all the fantasy names straight in his mind. Refocusing, he declared that the most pressing issue was finding a way to return all three of them safely to their city. Karen, sounding more confident now, asked if he intended to protect them from the villains. Kai immediately shattered that expectation by stating he could not promise anything. Shocked by his cold response, Karen flared up and demanded to know why he would say such a thing. With a completely serious expression, Kai replied that no one could ever guarantee victory in a real fight. Deep down, he understood better than anyone that this was no longer just a game. Because of that, he wanted to avoid deadly battles at all costs, even though he was already familiar with much of the world. To emphasize his point, he reminded them that they had no way of knowing how many enemies lurked out there or how strong those enemies might be. If they wanted everyone to survive, the most important strategy was to avoid trouble whenever possible. In the end, each of them had only one life, and once it was gone, there would be no chance to restart. With firm resolve, he vowed to do everything in his power to lead them to safety without being drawn into a fight. Karen, as blunt as ever, asks if he actually has a brilliant strategy in mind. Letting out a strained laugh, Kai admits that it's hard to think clearly under the pressure of her intense gaze. Cold sweat begins to form as he struggles to steady himself beneath her sharp and judgmental stare. After forcing himself to calm down, he finally says that the kidnappers are likely keeping watch over the city of Waffer. Pointing at the map with his finger, he explains that the bandits will naturally assume he fled to the nearest city. Therefore, he suggests that their safest option is to head south through the forest, reach a camp, and pay for a secure carriage there. Karen, still worried, points out that they have no money and cannot possibly afford the trip. Patting his bag, Kai reassures them that he took the bandits' money before leaving, and adds that they even have enough to buy fresh clothes if needed. Moved by everything he has done, Nina gently asks why he is helping them so much. She points out that he has used legendary elixirs and revealed information that no true secret agent would casually expose. Faced with such painfully reasonable logic, Kai begins to stammer, struggling to find a proper response. With no options remaining, he shamelessly doubles down, claiming to be an intelligence agent. To make his lie more convincing, he insists that he is merely following orders from above. Just then, the little blonde girl begins to stir on the bed. Noticing her movement, he asks if she has finally woken up. In a sleepy voice, little Remy says she has, but adds that the timing feels rather late. Wanting to change the subject, Kai stretches and suggests they all wash up in the river around dusk. Nina quickly asserts that she knows purification magic and can easily clean everyone. Always practical, Kai suggests they use that spell on Remy while he bathes alone in the river. Karen immediately finds this suspicious and comments that it's odd for a secret agent not to know such a basic spell. In an effort to protect his cover, he argues that relying on magic too often only attracts unnecessary attention. Soon after, the girls use purification magic to clean themselves in the room. Meanwhile, he enjoys a warm bath in the river, finally getting a chance to relax. Once everyone is clean, they gather around the fire to share a meal together. Ready to resume the journey, Kai dons a dark suit of armor that envelops him from head to toe. Taking the lead, he calls for the girls, announcing that it is finally time to depart. A week later, the guards stationed at Alia City receive an urgent alert. The atmosphere around the main gate is tense and restless, with guards moving swiftly. To everyone's immense relief, the group arrives safely at the city entrance. As soon as the guards recognize the three noble girls, one of them exhales deeply and remarks that it is a miracle to see them alive. Karen quickly responds, stating that all the credit goes to the armored knight who brought them back. Overflowing with gratitude, the soldier bows deeply and thanks him for performing such a heroic rescue. He then asks the young ladies to wait inside until their proper escort arrives. Curious, Nina turns to Kai and asks what he plans to do next. Speaking coolly through his armor, he replies that he intends to stay in the city for a while. Karen, never one to soften her words, inquires whether he has any specific plans. Before he can respond, the guard suggests that a warrior like him must report his success to his superiors. Without hesitation, Kai agrees and maintains the lie to avoid any further questions. The soldier pushes a bit more, inviting the armored hero to accept a proper reward, but Kai declines, stating he has no time. Hidden behind the helmet, the exhausted boy is already at his limit and longs for nothing more than a bed to collapse into. Before leaving, he warns the girls to follow instructions and to remain vigilant until they are safely home. With a smile, Karen accepts the advice and thanks him once more for everything he has done. In a small but gentle gesture, Kai pats Remy on the head and bids her farewell. The little blonde blushes softly and responds with a timid nod. After entrusting the girls to the guards, he turns and walks away without hesitation. Desperate to express his gratitude, the soldier attempts to stop him, but the knight swiftly silences his efforts. Without even glancing back, he states that he is simply going to enter the city and disappear. The guard captain respectfully welcomes the mysterious warrior into Aldea. As the black-armored figure vanishes into the crowd, the soldiers stand frozen in place. Staring after him, the captain mutters in disbelief that the man is truly extraordinary. Cold sweat trickles down his face as he declares that the armored knight is a complete monster. To clarify his actions, he explains that he used his appraisal skill and detected a high-ranking item on the stranger. Even more concerning, he reveals that only 2 elite clans have ever cleared the dungeon where such an item can be found. Based on the reports and the circumstances, the captain remembers that this same man single-handedly took down the Red Freed Mafia, rescued 3 hostages without a single scratch, and moved with remarkable caution throughout the entire ordeal. With all the evidence before him, the captain becomes convinced that he has encountered a legendary veteran. One of the younger guards, unable to contain himself, complains that the captain never even checked the man's identification. Angered, the captain interrupts him, asking if he truly wants to treat a hero like a criminal. In a firm tone, he warns the rookie that they cannot afford to offend someone who saved the 3 most important young women in the entire region. At that moment, another soldier suddenly recalls that the knight distributed universal elixirs as casually as if they were cups of water. The captain's eyes widen the instant he hears those words. As living proof, the guard explains that the noble girl's illnesses and fractures disappeared instantly after drinking them. Deeply impressed, the captain remarks that the knight gave away such priceless items without the slightest hesitation. The guards, all on edge, agree that the stranger's actions are utterly insane. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, the captain orders an immediate report to High Command and the guild. His subordinates quickly rush off to spread the news. After all, Karen is the daughter of the most prestigious ducal house among the nobility. Nina is part of the direct bloodline of the church's sacred foundation, and little Remy is the heir to the most powerful merchant family on the continent. As the captain pieces everything together, he concludes that the masked knight has intervened in the affairs of the greatest powers in the land without displaying even a hint of fear. To the captain, this man possesses divine-grade items, rejects any reward as if it holds no value, and acts as though he is entirely above ordinary concerns. In the captain's mind, only one explanation makes sense. The mysterious knight must belong to one of the Empire's secret forces. Completely unfazed by the chaos he has caused, Kai strolls through the city with wonder in his eyes. As he observes closely, he notices that the streets resemble those from the original game. Even from a distance, he can see the grand building of the Hunters Guild. Although he longs to run around and explore every corner, his body is worn down to the point of collapse. To make matters worse, everyone on the street keeps staring at him. When a small boy gazes at him particularly intently, he begins to wonder what the issue is. He had naively assumed that the city would be filled with people walking around in heavy armor. He soon realizes that his rare gear is glowing faintly and attracting far too much attention. Too exhausted to address it, he decides that getting inside is his top priority. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a little girl grabs onto his leg and excitedly exclaims that he looks amazing. Completely caught off guard, the armored boy freezes in the middle of the street. Elsewhere, inside a grand mansion, a cry of relief echoes through the hallways. With tears streaming down his face, Karen's father embraces his daughter and sobs with gratitude. Growing impatient, Karen urges him to calm down, breathe properly, and stop embarrassing himself. Amid the emotional chaos, her father suddenly realizes that she is standing perfectly fine and immediately apologizes for causing a scene. Smiling proudly, Karen reveals that her leg was healed by a universal elixir, then spins lightly to demonstrate her complete recovery. Her eyes gleam as she explains that the mysterious knight produced the legendary potion, speaking of it as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. Growing more animated, she explains that the warrior handed it over without hesitation and even refused any reward in return. Intrigued, the nobleman reads through the written report to confirm the details. As she studies it with him, Karen notices a new point and asks whether Kai truly acted on his own. Calmly, her father explains that he never sent anyone and adds that if he had possessed a universal elixir, he would have used it on her long ago. Karen ponders this and concludes that the so-called agent must have lied to reassure them during their escape. The head of the family considers the situation carefully and determines that the knight likely belongs to intelligence, as he was aware of the Red-Freed Mafia. In his view, the man clearly possessed inside knowledge of the syndicate, although his actual mission was solely to rescue the girls, suggesting he may have violated his organization's rules in the process. Wanting to help, Karen's father decides to send an official letter of thanks to ensure the savior's protection. Karen immediately feels uneasy, expressing that drawing attention could only worsen any punishment the agent might face. She then asks our father if he has any idea which secret organization the man belongs to. In a serious tone, he reveals that he received word 2 days earlier that Red-Freed had already been captured. Examining the route on the map, he realizes that the knight deliberately circled around Wofford to avoid attracting the bandits' attention. Karen quickly points out that this maneuver demonstrates just how sharp and tactical the knight truly is. The Duke remarks that everything about the man aligns perfectly with his suspicions. Fixing his gaze on his daughter, he reveals that the force responsible for capturing the Mafia is the Vardar Direct Control Squadron. Stunned, Karen repeats the name of the Empire's most feared organization. In practice, the Vardar Squadron operates directly under Imperial command, maintaining public order by any means necessary. There are even rumors that its members are the greatest hunters alive. In other words, they are the elite among elites, the absolute pinnacle of military power. Because of this, the Duke concludes that the savior must be a high-ranking individual entrusted with independent missions. For the sake of the knight, he instructs Karen to keep everything confidential and not reveal his identity. As a gesture of gratitude, the Duke vows to repay the debt, regardless of the cost. With the warrior having vanished somewhere in the city, he orders Karen to summon the maid, Lifia, and to begin the search immediately. Karen agrees without hesitation and rushes from the room. Left alone in his office, the Duke sinks into his armchair and begins to reflect. Deep in his heart, he prays that the knight truly is an important pillar of Vardar, for only that would shield him from severe consequences. Understanding how the world of power operates, the Duke also realizes that the other two families must already be attempting to locate the masked man. The next day, at the inn, the atmosphere is calm and almost sleepy. As he enjoys a delicious steak, the innkeeper thanks the young man for not causing any trouble in the establishment. Making conversation, the owner comments on how incredibly polite the man in black armor is. As he relaxes and eats, Kai listens to the praise with a blank expression, unaware of how absurd the situation has become. Seizing the opportunity of the peaceful atmosphere, the innkeeper inquires if Kai has traveled from far away, to which Kai responds with a small nod. Suddenly, the tavern door swings open as a soldier bursts in, drawing everyone's attention to the entrance. In an urgent tone, the guard asks if anyone has seen a knight dressed in black armor nearby. At that moment, Kai and the innkeeper exchange a startled glance. Panic rises within him, and he silently pleads with the owner to protect him. The old man smoothly lies to the soldier, claiming he has seen no such person, while suggesting that the Duke is clearly overreacting. The guard, unconvinced, presses him for more information and asks again. Breaking into a cold sweat, the innkeeper maintains his composure, and Kai silently thanks every god he can think of for the man's acting talent. Letting out a frustrated sigh, the soldier finally accepts the answer, thanks him, and leaves. Once the door closes, silence settles over the inn once more. However, just as Kai begins to think the danger has passed, another person steps inside. This time, it is a nun from the Holy Church, inquiring about a man in black armor. The innkeeper swiftly pushes Kai behind the counter and concocts another excuse. With a polite smile, he tells the nun that he hasn't seen anyone matching that description. Satisfied, she thanks him for his time and departs. The door has barely closed when yet another messenger bursts in, this time from the Merchant Council. Nearly driven to tears, Kai crouches on the floor behind the counter, curling into himself to avoid being seen. Once more, the innkeeper offers the same feeble excuse to shield him. The guard eventually gives up, bids his farewells, and grumbles about his failure. Finally alone again, the innkeeper calls out to Kai, who is still trembling beneath the counter. Terrified, he slowly crawls out, struggling to comprehend the disaster that just unfolded. Holding his head in disbelief, the old man wonders what kind of crime Kai could have committed to draw the attention of the three greatest powers in the city all at once. Completely confused, Kai insists he has no idea what he did wrong and begins to wonder if he inadvertently made a terrible mistake. Nearly desperate, the owner urges him to resolve the matter quickly before the tavern is dragged down and shut down. Caught in an unexpected mess, Kai can only think about how he is supposed to disappear now. Meanwhile, Karen's older sister carefully examines the redhead's leg to confirm that she is truly fine. Karen calmly reassures her that it no longer hurts at all and that she is completely healed. Sitting on the bed, Karen expresses her gratitude to her sister for the care she has always provided and admits that she will miss their familiar routine. With a soft smile, her sister replies that she is pleased to see Karen's progress, though she also feels a strange emptiness now that their old habits are coming to an end. Before long, Karen's thoughts drift back to the masked knight. She expresses her confusion about how someone so conspicuous has yet to be found anywhere in the city. In her view, Kai is clearly attempting to mislead the searchers. Pulling up a chair, her sister agrees, noting that their father shares the same belief. In a quieter tone, Karen admits her fear that the knight will be punished for giving away a legendary elixir. With one hand on her hip, she recalls how he even tried to pretend the potion came from his own personal supply. From her perspective, the masked warrior did everything possible to hide his ties to the organization he serves. Letting out a deep sigh, Karen expresses her hope that he won't face any severe consequences. Her sister, slightly amused, remarks that it's rare to see Karen looking both worried and adorable at the same time. Shrugging awkwardly, Karen insists that the knight saved them all on his own, so he certainly deserves that level of concern. As her face turns red, she crosses her arms and complains about being teased. In her eyes, the knight genuinely risked his safety to rescue them, even though it may have put him in jeopardy with his own organization. To clarify further, she mentions that both Nina's and Remy's family share the same sentiment. Nevertheless, Karen insists that she is the one who thinks about the savior more than anyone else. Her sister immediately bursts into laughter and playfully suggests that this must be love. Meanwhile, back at the inn, the owner attempts to reassure Kai, insisting that he has done nothing wrong. Despite this comfort, rumors continue to spread through the streets, and the search for the Black Knight intensifies. The old man bluntly points out that no one but Kai himself could possibly be the masked man. Feeling completely cornered, Kai begins to wonder what kind of punishment awaits him if the rumors are true. The innkeeper warns that in the worst-case scenario, the three great families might banish him from the city forever. Looking at him with pity, the old man confesses that hiding him is weighing heavily on his conscience. Yet he still advises Kai not to switch ends at this point. To make matters worse, the reward for information on Kai has already risen to $3 million at the city council. Startled by that amount, Kai blurts out and asks the old man why he hasn't turned him in yet. Laughing at his expression, the innkeeper explains that the three families are managing the situation quietly behind the scenes to avoid drawing public attention. In the end, the old man suggests that Kai should put his armor back on, slip outside, and at least enjoy the festival while he still can. Feeling mentally drained, Kai agrees and steps away from the counter with his head hung low. Wishing him luck, the owner advises him to enjoy the city while he still has the chance. Slightly encouraged by this notion, Kai resolves to make the most of one last day before facing the inevitable departure the following morning. As he strolls through the streets, he observes the sun beginning to set and searches for at least one small bright side in his absurd situation. His gaze lands on the city's magnificent clock tower. Back in the game, he had always enjoyed climbing that tower at the same hour. Despite knowing the entrance fee is exorbitantly high, he makes his way directly to the ticket booth. Determined to relive the memory, he climbs floor after floor, taking in the view around him. When he finally reaches the top, he is met with surprise. The summit of the clock tower should have been empty, yet someone is already there, quietly admiring the scenery. An elegant woman dressed in black stood beneath the open sky, her face concealed by a mysterious mask. As soon as she sensed his arrival, the red-haired woman slowly turned to face him. For a brief moment, Kai froze, mesmerized by her striking beauty. Stammering awkwardly, he could only manage a simple greeting. With calm politeness, the woman welcomed him to the top of the tower. At that moment, he recalled a rumor from the game about a hidden encounter with a woman at the clock tower. Remaining cautious, he kept his distance, wondering if this was indeed that very event. In a gentle tone, the masked woman praised the view, noting that it was the perfect place to clear one's mind. Agreeing with her, Kai admitted that the scenery was indeed breathtaking. Curious, the woman asked what had brought him to such a place. Looking a bit downcast, he confessed that he had come to sort through some troubles weighing on his mind. Then she shifted the subject and inquired whether he knew the man in black armor. The question made him swallow hard, and a wave of fear surged in his chest as he wondered if his identity had been exposed. Forcing a nervous smile, he brushed it off and remarked that the Black Knight had become the talk of the entire city. The woman candidly admitted that she was also searching for that hero and expressed her desire to meet him in person. Uneasy, Kai asked if the Black Knight had done something wrong. Laughing softly, she assured him that the man was not wanted for anything sinister. She soon explained that the authorities simply wished to express their gratitude, though the details had been kept confidential. Hearing this, Kai relaxed a little. Learning that he was not being pursued for punishment lifted a great burden from his shoulders. Just then, a luxurious carriage arrived at the base of the tower. Spotting it, the mysterious woman realized her ride had come. Curious, Kai inquired if she had to leave already. With graceful charm, the woman assured him that they would surely make progress in the search soon, then offered her farewell. As she descended the stairs, she left an air of mystery lingering in her wake. Alone once more on the observation deck, Kai watched her depart. For a moment, he stood there, deep in thought, unable to guess the true identity of the masked woman. Outside the tower, she stepped into the carriage, where Karen was already waiting, eager and impatient. The little redhead insisted they should wear masks while searching the city to find Kai without drawing too much attention. Karen's sister quickly teased her, expressing that she felt like just an extra in one of Karen's reckless schemes. The masked woman laughed lightly and apologized for her sister's boldness. Ultimately, she admitted that she was simply glad her sister had come to rescue her from the tower. During the carriage ride, the masked woman mentioned that she had met a young man at the clock tower. Given the rumors surrounding the place, Karen quickly suspected that the stranger had been looking into the city's search efforts. With a calm smile, the woman assured her that although she had been suspicious at first, their conversation had been peaceful and without hidden motives. For the masked woman, it was a rare and oddly pleasant moment of tranquility. She explained that she had cautiously asked him about the Black Knight as a test, but the young man appeared to know nothing. Disappointed, Karen muttered that her father had already begun to suspect that Kai had left the city. Then, without warning, the masked woman recalled one striking detail about the young man from the tower, and Karen immediately went still. Sharply curious, the redhead demanded to know exactly what the man looked like. The woman described him as a handsome young man with a calm presence and a scar on the left side of his face. Karen immediately shouted that the Black Knight had that exact same scar. Without a moment's hesitation, she threw open the carriage window in desperation. Raising her voice at the driver, she ordered him to turn around and head back to the tower immediately. Startled by her reaction, her sister asked if she was truly serious about such a wild conclusion. But Karen, shocked by the revelation, realized there was a strong possibility that the stranger from the tower had been Kai in disguise. Upset that no one had informed her sooner, she explained that the scar was something known only to her and her father. Her sister, finally grasping the significance of that detail, fell into stunned silence. The carriage made a sharp turn on the deserted road and sped back immediately. As soon as it stopped, the two sisters rushed out and sprinted toward the clock tower as fast as they could. Filled with hope, they prayed they would reach the top before Kai vanished. By the time they arrived, both were out of breath. To Karen's dismay, the terrace was already empty. Kai had already left. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Treasure Hunters Guild, the guildmaster was losing his mind, still lacking any information about the Black Knight. While reviewing the latest reports, he concluded that the masked man was most likely a member of the imperial force known as Vertar. By his assessment, Kai had single-handedly saved the daughters of the three most powerful families in the region, while also dismantling the Red Freed Syndicate. Considering the entire situation, the guild leader noted that kidnapping such high-ranking noble daughters was practically equivalent to attacking the empire itself. Given the crisis at hand, he believed it made perfect sense for Vertar to step in personally and address the situation. To exacerbate his anxiety, he lamented that no one in the city had managed to establish contact with the knight. Driven by desperation, the guildmaster even instructed his subordinates to accidentally encounter the man if necessary, just to initiate a conversation. In a bitter twist of fate, even that plan failed. When a little girl ran into him, Kai simply helped her up and continued on his way. The spies were left speechless, unable to do anything but thank him as they watched him disappear into the crowd. Defeated, the guildmaster sighed, wishing only for the knight to return to the capital as soon as possible to avoid causing further complications. Suddenly, the office door was flung open by the receptionist, who, in obvious panic, announced that the masked man had just entered the guild. Assuming it was a joke, the master told her to stop fooling around. However, when he saw the open doorway and her expression, he realized it was genuine. In the main hall, the imposing black armor had already captured the attention of every hunter present. The guildmaster rushed out immediately to greet the distinguished visitor. Behind him, the receptionist nearly burst out laughing at how quickly his attitude had shifted. The hunters struggled to contain their laughter as they remarked on how absurdly polite their usually rough superior had suddenly become. Sweating heavily, the guild leader inquired about what had brought such an important individual to the guild. Trying to mask his own nervousness, Kai replied that he had only come to take a look around. The master immediately welcomed him with exaggerated courtesy, thanking him for honoring the guild with his presence. However, in his mind, the master had already begun to concoct countless conspiracy theories about that seemingly harmless remark. Upon hearing the words, "take a look around," he interpreted them as reconnaissance masked as a casual visit. Within seconds, he concluded that there was no point in attempting to outmaneuver someone so far above him. In short, the guild leader convinced himself that he was facing a formidable strategic mastermind. Having once dreamed of joining Vertar but never possessing the strength to qualify, he could only gaze at the living embodiment of that ideal and feel the chasm between them. Maintaining his respectful demeanor, he invited the masked warrior to his office, should they wish to explore the place further. Kai accepted immediately, believing that this treatment was standard guild procedure. As they climbed the stairs, the entire hall erupted into gossip. Below, the hunters eagerly exchanged theories at their tables. To many, the entire situation felt like pure theater and exaggerated rumor. However, some observed that the man's composure was far too calm for an ordinary person. Moreover, the warrior moved with his guard down, as if he were simply waiting for any attacker to make the first move. This led them to conclude that a man so relaxed must possess the strength to effortlessly defeat anyone present. A chill swept through the room. Some of the hunters recoiled, convinced that in a close fight, the entire guild would stand no chance against him. Deep down, more than one of them wondered if the masked knight might even be strong enough to challenge an S-rank beast. Meanwhile, the protagonist silently endured as he envisioned the guild members concocting even more absurd legends about him. With each step, he felt the weight of the lies surrounding him growing larger and increasingly unmanageable. Following the brief visit, the guildmaster personally escorted the knight back to the entrance. Still sweating from the tension, Kai resolved then and there that he never wanted to step inside that guild again. Venting inwardly, he reflected on his expectation that the guild would question him. Instead, the atmosphere had felt deeply bizarre. Remembering the murderous fear and reverence in everyone's eyes, he shivered. What troubled him even more was that the guildmaster had been unusually polite. In stark contrast to the rude demeanor he remembered from the original game, he couldn't quite grasp why he had received such VIP treatment from the hunters, and it left him feeling uneasy. Nevertheless, despite this discomfort, the trip had allowed him to explore the city and alleviate his boredom. Determined to keep moving, he stepped back onto the street, but soon realized that peaceful sightseeing was impossible in such flashy armor. Just then, he heard the sound of a carriage stopping directly behind him. Karen leapt out immediately, pointed straight at him, and triumphantly declared that she had finally found him. Kai froze in place as he recognized the crest on the carriage, realizing it belonged to Karen's noble house. Without concealing her irritation, Karen demanded to know where he had been hiding all this time. Pointing vaguely to the side, he admitted that he had spent the entire time at the inn downtown. Shocked, she expressed her frustration that the tavern owner had lied directly to her when he claimed not to have seen the Black Knight. With a mischievous smile, Kai confessed that he had asked the innkeeper for that small favor. Karen immediately deflated, left speechless by the humiliating realization that she had been deceived by an old tavern keeper. Attempting to dismiss the situation, the masked man suggested that perhaps he was simply skilled at hiding. Annoyed by his jest, Karen grumbled that she had no interest in hearing any more of his feeble excuses. At that moment, a sweet feminine voice from inside the carriage caught her attention. As soon as he heard it, Kai recognized her immediately by her voice and hair. The woman from the clock tower stepped gracefully out of the carriage, and now without her mask, formally introduced herself as Lithia. With calm sincerity, she apologized for the delay and expressed her gratitude once again for rescuing them. In a gentle tone, she inquired if the knight might have some free time. Already anticipating trouble, Kai voiced his concerns about what might happen if he accepted such an invitation. Karen swiftly clarified that he was merely being asked to come to the mansion to receive a formal expression of gratitude. Without hesitation, Kai curtly replied that he was busy and refused on the spot. Despite all he had done, he genuinely feared that one mistake in front of high-ranking nobles could lead to his execution. Sensing his nervousness, both sisters let out soft chuckles. Karen had no intention of accepting his refusal. She took his hand firmly and, blushing slightly, insisted that he allow the family to thank him properly. Just this once, wrapping herself around his armored arm, she began to pull him toward the carriage. Utterly defeated, Kai climbed into the vehicle, resigning himself to whatever fate awaited him. During the ride, Karen smiled with satisfaction, pleased that she had finally managed to capture the runaway hero. From Kai's perspective, however, it felt less like an invitation and more like being arrested and taken into custody. Lithia also expressed her gratitude, stating that his rescue had not only saved their lives, but also preserved the honor of the duchy itself. Resigned, Kai silently acknowledged that the chaos finally began to make a bit more sense. Then Karen pointed at him again and declared that there was still one very important question she needed to address. Hidden behind his helmet, Kai inwardly grumbled about Karen's stiff and intimidating tone. Before long, the redhead lost her patience, dropped the formal act, and reverted to her usual loud and fiery self. With a quick nod, the Black Knight urged her to stop prolonging the conversation and simply state her intentions. Karen got straight to the point, asking if he had discarded a fortune in legendary potions during the rescue for no reason. Burdened by guilt, she confessed that she had begun to believe he had vanished from the city due to trouble with his organization. In a reassuring tone, the warrior told her that the items belonged to him and that there was no problem at all. Upon hearing that, Lithia's eyes widened as she silently confirmed to herself that the potions were indeed real. Karen, still concerned, questioned whether keeping such an immense treasure for himself was dangerous. Pressing him anxiously, she insisted that he explain more clearly how he had come by such items. Inside the helmet, Kai felt a surge of panic, completely at a loss for how to concoct an excuse to escape the conversation. Cornered, he understood he had no choice but to reassure the two sisters that everything was under control. As a last resort, he declared that he had no regrets, and emphasized that the only thing that truly mattered was that her leg had healed. With a calm and unexpectedly charming tone, he told Karen to simply enjoy her life while he dealt with his own problems. The little redhead instantly flushed bright red, and silence enveloped the carriage. Lithia, equally impressed, thanked him once again for his kindness. Trying to shift the mood, Kai raised one finger and said he wanted to ask for a small favor. The two sisters immediately focused their attention on him, eager to hear what this mysterious request would be. Outside, the luxurious carriage continued rolling through the city streets toward the Duke's mansion. With unusual seriousness, the knight asked them to step in and help him if he accidentally acted rudely in front of their father. Karen's eyes widened in disbelief, struggling to comprehend why someone like him would request something so simple. In utter shock, she exclaimed that he had given away a legendary potion without even asking for money in return. Attempting to justify his actions, he lied, claiming he was merely a commoner afraid of offending nobles. Deep down, he knew that staying alive and avoiding execution would be the greatest reward he could possibly receive. For a brief moment, the two sisters exchanged a glance, clearly processing his weak excuse. To Lithia, someone hiding behind such a flimsy fear while carrying himself in that manner felt deeply suspicious. From the way he dodged the real issue, she could tell his excuse was poorly constructed, almost as if he wanted them to accept it without probing further. Nevertheless, she agreed to the request and promised to help him if necessary. Karen crossed her arms and insisted that her father would never be angry with the man who had saved the family. Lithia kindly assured him that she would handle any mistakes he made during the meeting. Then, with a teasing tone, Karen asked if he planned to keep his helmet on the entire time. Resting one hand on the back of his neck, the knight admitted that it would be rude not to show his face. Karen laughed and clarified that she didn't mind the armor itself. She simply wanted to see his face without the protection. As soon as those words left her mouth, she blushed furiously, prompting Lithia to immediately scold her for being so shameless and direct. Caught off guard by the sisters' little argument, Kai could only sit there and watch. Livia smiled softly as she watched the lighthearted exchange between her younger sister and their savior. In her heart, she had already begun to view the masked warrior as the most sincere and honorable man she had ever encountered. To her, the claim of being a cowardly commoner hiding behind armor was clearly just a ruse to maintain the cover of some secret imperial organization. Faced with such modesty despite his overwhelming strength, she could not blame her younger sister for so clearly falling under his spell. From Livia's own experience, the more famous a hero became, the prouder and more arrogant he usually grew. Even worse, the people surrounding such men often became consumed by envy and greed. In nearly every instance, warriors displayed their gold, status, and power at every opportunity. Yet the man sitting before her had confronted a deadly mafia and rescued noble daughters, all while remaining humble and restrained. Because of this, she felt that her family owed him a debt that could never truly be repaid. What she admired most was that he never once attempted to exploit their vulnerability. Wanting to ease the awkward tension, Karen admitted that she was genuinely nervous about the visit. Seizing the moment, the knight teased her, remarking that she wasn't nearly as cool as she liked to pretend if she was getting nervous so easily. In response, Karen pointed at him and shouted that she wasn't scared at all. She was simply tense because of all the preparations. Lithia laughed warmly at her younger sister's outburst, finding the whole scene genuinely amusing. In her eyes, the secretive knight had clearly provoked Karen on purpose to help her relax. As the Duke's daughter, Karen had always been surrounded by insincere smiles, scheming nobles, and painfully dull politicians. Due to the age gap in social standings, many noble girls kept their distance from her during gatherings. To make matters worse, most young men approached her solely because they viewed her as a potential political match. As a result, Karen had never truly had a friend with whom she could act like an ordinary girl her age. In the end, the other nobles simply walked past her, pretending not to notice her loneliness. This is why Lithia found so much joy in watching Kai tolerate her sister's antics with both patience and humor. Unable to endure the slow pace of the ride any longer, Karen grabbed her sister's arm and insisted they hurry back to the mansion. Sitting quietly nearby, Kai could only sigh as he watched the sisters stir up another little storm. In Lithia's mind, he had concealed his strength and ridden in the carriage quietly to spare the Duke's family from embarrassment. Additionally, he had given her a medicine so valuable it could purchase entire cities, all without asking for a single coin in return. The noblewoman was utterly enchanted, convinced that no other man in the world possessed a heart so pure. With warmth rising to her cheeks, she began to contemplate ways to keep such a man close to her family. Taking a more practical tone, Lithia inquired about how long the knight intended to stay in the city. With his usual relaxed charm, he praised the city and remarked that the duration of his stay would depend entirely on his mood. To Lithia, that vague answer only reinforced her suspicion that his movements were dictated by secret missions from the organization backing him. Reflecting on this, she believed that as long as a knight like him continued to fight in the shadows, the entire empire would remain safe. Captivated by the thought of him, she began to wonder if it was too selfish to want him to stay in the city. Deep down, she recognized that Karen's strong feelings for him were gradually influencing her as well. Completely unaware of the turmoil he had stirred in their minds, Kai simply shifted in his seat and tried to get comfortable. When the ducal mansion finally came into view, its sheer grandeur was enough to overwhelm any visitor. Without hesitation, the knight stepped down and opened the carriage door for the sisters. In the central courtyard, dozens of servants and guards stood in formation, creating a long corridor. Faced with such a grand display, Kai felt utterly confused and wondered what was happening. Lithia, delighted by the reception, explained that this was the family's highest possible show of respect. Overwhelmed by the attention, Kai nearly lost his tough and composed demeanor right then and there. Concealing his panic, he cautioned that such a grand display would only attract more unwanted scrutiny. With a confident smile, Lithia responded that anyone who took issue with it would simply have to answer to the household guards. Swallowing hard, Kai accepted the ceremonial escort, inwardly fearing the consequences for anyone who failed to show proper respect. By the harsh logic of noble society, he understood that refusing such a welcome could be far more perilous than accepting it. Then, without warning, the head maid and the captain of the guard knelt directly on the stone floor. Bowing their heads, they expressed their honor in receiving the black hero at the mansion. Moments later, the elderly housekeeper rose and respectfully announced that the masters were already waiting in the main hall. With a graceful curtsy, Lithia thanked the staff and mentioned that she and Karen would go change first. Lightly joking, she added that she would be in the other room in case the knight needed the small assistance they had promised earlier. Karen nodded solemnly and stated that she would also act swiftly if the situation took a turn for the worse. Left alone at the entrance with the guards, Kai immediately began to sweat again. Moments later, the captain approached him and offered to guide him personally. With perfect courtesy, the soldier asked if he could hold the warrior's black sword for safety while he entered the mansion. Handing over the weapon so quickly left the captain visibly surprised, and he asked if the knight was truly certain. Trying to keep things casual, Kai remarked that it was perfectly normal to remove one's weapon inside a noble residence. Then, in a tone that was far too sincere to be comforting, he added that he was actually much more dangerous fighting without a sword than with one. The servant's eyes widened in disbelief. The captain swallowed hard as terror crept into his expression, realizing just how monstrous that statement sounded. Beneath the helmet, however, Kai was not exaggerating. He spoke with complete sincerity. Back when he had still been a player in the game, he had been reincarnated into a body with extraordinary physical capabilities. His reflexes were unnaturally sharp, causing weapons to disrupt the rhythm of his movements. For this reason, he believed his bare hands were far better suited for crushing enemies than any blade. The captain, of course, was unaware of this reasoning. To him, the stranger appeared less like a man and more like a dark lord of death. Continuing onward, the old maid guided the armored monster through the mansion corridors. When he paused before the door to the main hall, Kai felt his heart pounding in his chest. Resting his hand on the doorknob, he silently prayed that the meeting would conclude quickly and without bloodshed. Meanwhile, back in the courtyard, the captain of the guard couldn't take his eyes off the black sword in his hands. According to the game system, that divine blade never chipped or broke and could cut through absolutely anything. Seizing the moment, the captain jokingly offered Karen the chance to hold it under his supervision. The little redhead rushed over like a storm. Excited beyond reason, she nearly leaped toward him, eager to test the legendary weapon of her savior. Completely fascinated, she stared at the polished black metal with shining eyes. Overflowing with enthusiasm, she insisted that the captain show it to her properly at once. Amused by her enthusiasm, the soldier presented the blade, which gleamed like a jewel sharpened into a deadly edge. Karen tilted her head and remarked that the sword was almost too beautiful, making it hard for her to imagine it enduring real battle. Still captivated, the captain agreed, noting that it resembled a work of art more than a weapon of war. Beneath the sunlight, the black metal shimmered beautifully, momentarily hypnotizing both of them. Resting one hand on her chin, Lethia began to wonder what style of combat a warrior like him employed, if he claimed not to rely on weapons. In her mind, the stranger must be a master tactician who valued speed and precision over brute force. Distracted by the conversation, Karen reached out to grasp the divine sword. In that moment, the weapon's incredible weight took her completely by surprise. Startled, the captain lunged to catch her as she pitched forward. Lacking the strength to control it, the young noble lost her balance, and the blade slipped from her hands, crashing down toward the stone courtyard. It sliced through the stone as easily as a hot knife through butter. For a brief moment, the entire courtyard fell silent at the crisp sound of the cut. Karen stared at the result, stunned beyond words and unable to comprehend what she had just done. The captain and Lethia cried out in horror as they watched the stone split cleanly apart with no resistance. In that moment, the older sister realized with absolute clarity that no armor in existence could protect a person from such a weapon. Trembling, the captain recalled the warrior's earlier words about being more dangerous without it. He rushed to check if Karen had been injured in the incident, stammering in terror. He vowed that if anything had happened to her, he would tell the Duke it was entirely his fault and not hers. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, the meeting in the main hall had already commenced over an elegant tea service. Outside the hall door, the two sisters listened quietly. From within, the deep voice of the Duke resonated as he expressed profound gratitude to the mysterious hero for all he had done. Karen looked surprised, realizing that her father sounded far more humble than usual. Lethia gave a small nod and remarked that the reason should already be obvious. Listening through the door, the sisters realized that even the powerful lord of the duchy had bowed his head before the masked man. Due to his political position, the Duke always had to reject any display of superiority to avoid appearing weak. Placing a hand over her chest, Lethia sighed softly. Witnessing how deeply gratitude had humbled her father's pride, Karen felt a pang of sadness for how her family had been forced to submit because of the kidnapping. Lethia dryly asked if Karen still had time to complain. The younger girl blinked in confusion, unsure why her sister had suddenly turned sharp with her. With ruthless clarity, Lethia reminded her that she had just destroyed the stone courtyard of the ducal mansion. As reality set in, Karen froze in place. She suddenly recalled that she had damaged the family's main walkway with someone else's divine sword. Nearly in tears, she lamented that her father would surely be furious with her over this disaster. Lithia pointed a finger at her, emphasizing that Karen had also betrayed the captain's trust, as he had only allowed her to handle the weapon because he believed in her. Karen began shouting in panic, insisting that nobody had warned her the sword would be so heavy or so absurdly sharp. Lithia watched her younger sister collapse into despair and could barely contain her laughter. Even while trying not to laugh, she told Karen to stop whining. She reminded her that Karen was healthy now and had the rest of her life ahead of her to enjoy all the good things she had once been denied. Brightening immediately, Karen declared her intention to embrace life to the fullest with her restored legs. Lithia smiled sweetly as she watched the excitement return to her sister's face. Karen nodded, finally appearing much calmer. Changing the subject, Lithia noted that Kai had clearly attempted to hide his true strength. If the Emperor were to discover that he had casually used a legendary elixir, the warrior could find himself in serious trouble. Because of that sacrifice, Karen vowed to reward the masked man in the best way she could. Lithia then recalled an odd detail from the report and voiced her doubts. According to everything she had heard, the man had refused rewards and acted as if the entire rescue had been nothing out of the ordinary. In reality, any ordinary person would have been overwhelmed by the kind of rewards a duke could offer. Money, land, influence, and status, who in their right mind would refuse payment from one of the greatest noble houses? Yet, Lithia quietly admitted that what she truly desired was simply to see his face again. In response, Karen immediately protested, declaring that she would rather be the only one to have that privilege. Laughing, Lithia teased her, suggesting that she sounded jealous, as if she wanted to keep the warrior all to herself. Flustered, Karen attempted to defend herself, insisting that she had only noticed the scar near his eye during a rescue. In that moment, Lithia suddenly grasped much more than she had before. Karen's fixation was now clear and easy to understand. The redhead immediately frowned and denied feeling anything deep for the stranger. Silence stretched between them as the sisters exchanged a look charged with dramatic tension. Karen, clearly nervous, insisted it was only gratitude and nothing more. While the younger girl struggled with her confusion, the mood in the adults' room remained painfully tense. Clutching her tea, Karen silently prayed that her father would not scare the savior away. In the main hall, the atmosphere was anything but comfortable. The pressure in the room was so thick it felt almost tangible. Sweating through his composure, the Duke and his wife stared at the towering figure in black armor with unmistakable dread. Across from them, the knight sat motionless, not twitching a muscle. Unable to comprehend the warrior's demeanor, the Duke found himself questioning why the man had not yet asked for anything in return. In the nobleman's eyes, the stranger was intentionally embracing humility to avoid embarrassing the family. Out of respect, the Black Knight showed no signs of attempting to claim the debt owed to him. Having saved their daughters, he now found himself in a position where the Duke could easily refuse any request he might make. Due to the family's suspicions regarding Verdar and the Empire, the Lord believed the young warrior was connected to the highest echelons of national power. In other words, the knight had sufficient support to overpower any politician who dared to oppose him. His complete silence behind the armor only heightened the terror he inspired in the duchy's rulers. Sitting rigidly on the sofa, the Duchess quietly suggested to her husband that this entire meeting might be a test of loyalty. Thinking quickly, the Duke concluded that treating a visitor in such a manner, without absolute formality, would be dangerously foolish. Caught in a tense situation, he started to spin one elaborate theory after another in his mind. To him, the warrior's silence felt less like calm restraint and more like an ultimatum delivered from the shadows. Even more troubling, the Lord realized that if the masked man were to leave the mansion without a proper reward, the entire ducal family would face disgrace. Just then, the knight shifted slightly in his seat, and the sound of his armor clinking seemed to freeze the entire room. The Duke nearly stopped breathing, convinced there was no room for even the smallest mistake in this exchange. Seizing the opportunity presented by the sacred elixir, he finally compelled himself to take the lead and offer compensation. In a tone that was both polite and direct, the Duke began by expressing that his family felt deeply honored. Still filled with fear, he apologized for taking so long to present a reward worthy of such a hero. Inside his helmet, Kai nearly sighed in relief and simply agreed, eager for the meeting to conclude without disaster. With a composed smile, the Duke's wife remarked that offering such a reward was a matter of pride for the entire noble house. Now that the moment had arrived, the Duke finally began outlining the terms of payment for the rescue. Holding up 3 fingers, he offered the knight a private mansion, a substantial sum of money, and the duchy's political support. Kai was so taken aback by the unexpected generosity that he nearly choked and lost his composure right then and there. Across the tea table, the Duke and Duchess humbly requested that the Black Knight accept their small token of gratitude. In the Duke's mind, offering an Empire agent a secret base of operations was a brilliant strategy. This move would also earn the duchy favor with the Emperor's own covert warriors. Overjoyed, the knight accepted the offer without hesitation, and the agreement was finalized on the spot. The Duke allowed himself a small, victorious smile, convinced he had successfully passed an invisible loyalty test. With the tension finally easing, he suggested that his daughters personally show the knight his new mansion that very day. Kai agreed immediately, declaring that he would take proper care of the luxurious property. Without delay, the Duchess instructed the guards to summon their daughters to accompany the guest. Rising gracefully from her seat, she gestured for the knight to follow her down the corridor and let himself be guided to the visitor's room. Awkwardly, Kai nodded and slipped out in silence. The moment the great doors closed behind him, the silence in the main hall became overwhelmingly heavy. With trembling hands, the Duke sank back into his chair and allowed his rigid body to relax at last. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, he muttered that he was genuinely relieved to have survived the meeting. In a final reflection, he acknowledged that his daughter had been correct. The warrior was indeed no ordinary man. Just outside the neighboring door, the masked boy stretched his arms and quietly exhaled the breath of panic he had been holding in his chest. Karen quickly noticed his limp and exhausted posture, pointing it out with a hint of amusement. Attempting to mask his embarrassment, Kai joked that armor was quite effective at concealing emotions. With gentle warmth, Lithia invited him to have tea and take a moment to rest after such an absurd meeting with their parents. However, Karen shifted back to business, expressing her frustration over how little emotion he had shown after receiving 3 substantial rewards. Slightly annoyed, she remarked that he could have at least pretended to smile after becoming both a villa owner and a millionaire in just one conversation. Sitting there with his legs stretched out, Kai held back the urge to blurt out that, internally, he had nearly died of happiness. Behind the helmet, he acknowledged that receiving such an overwhelming amount of wealth out of nowhere was simply too absurd to comprehend. In truth, he knew that if he had been alone, he would have been doing cartwheels out of pure joy. Lithia, still focused and composed, joined in and expressed her desire to clarify one last point about the reward. Sincerely, she explained that if what the duchy had offered was still insufficient, this would be the perfect moment for Kai to request anything more he desired. Hidden behind his calm persona, Kai found it almost unbelievable that he already had full pockets and a mansion of his own without needing anything else. Nevertheless, he carefully maintained his reserved demeanor, determined not to jeopardize his serious secret. Changing the subject, he inquired whether handing over one of the family's mansions was not a significant loss for the duchy. Smiling softly, Lithia explained that the family owned several villas, and that particular property held no sentimental value. Karen grumbled that the house was far too large for one person to live in alone. She noted that, compared to the duchy's main residence, the villa was not far behind in scale. Hearing that, Kai realized just how outrageous the value of his so-called small gift truly was. In his mind, only a completely insane noble would give away something so luxurious as a thank you present. With a mischievous tone, Karen asked if he intended to let anyone else live in the mansion with him. Hidden inside his helmet, Kai let out a nervous laugh and replied that he planned to use it solely as his personal base. In Lithia's eyes, it seemed entirely natural that such a renowned hero would not yet have a wife or a steady partner. Karen bluntly asked if the Black Knight had any romantic interests at the moment. Lithia immediately blushed and scolded her younger sister for the question. Before the mood could become more awkward, Kai stepped in, inviting them to visit the villa whenever they wished, so it wouldn't feel empty. Karen's eyes widened, and her entire face lit up with joy at the personal invitation. Without hesitation, Kai promised to give them a spare key so they could enter the villa even when he wasn't there. In truth, he realized that having the girls around occasionally would be the perfect distraction for any suspicious eyes and nosy onlookers. Delighted by the idea, Karen declared that she would happily test his patience every single day. Full of initiative, Lithia quickly suggested they visit the villa to see it for themselves. Bathed in sunlight, the grand mansion appeared even more imposing. The spacious living room was spotless, with the furniture arranged in perfect order. The large, bright kitchen was filled with every kind of utensil, each gleaming as if just used for a fresh meal. Lithia smiled and explained that this was merely a small token of gratitude from her family, assuring him he should not feel burdened by it. Kai pushes open the heavy door and discovers that the house is already fully furnished, complete with furniture and tableware. He wonders aloud if it is truly acceptable for him to receive such a luxurious residence. Karen looks at him and remarks that he can be surprisingly humble at times, despite the casual way he usually speaks to her. Kai steps into the spacious living room, taking in the lavish interior before apologetically inviting them to sit. He explains that although the mansion was given to him, he wants them to treat it as their own home and to feel comfortable resting here. Karen plants her hands on her hips and retorts that she is not tired at all. Kai responds with helpless concern, reminding her that children should not push themselves too hard. Karen shouts back that she is not a child. She then realizes that he is suggesting she sit down out of consideration, likely because her leg is only recently healed. The dark armor Kai spreads his hands and explains that he didn't use medicine on her just to push her to overexert herself. He adds that if rumors circulated claiming he forced the Duke's daughter to overwork, his life would be ruined. Then, with a hint of humor, he quips that if she dislikes sofas so much, she might as well sit on his hard suit of armor instead. Between a soft sofa and rigid black armor, anyone would naturally choose a sofa. It seems like the perfect solution. Instead, Karen strides over and sits directly on his lap. Kai's body stiffens immediately, and he nervously asks what she thinks she is doing. With her face burning red, Karen replies that he was the one who suggested it. Kai insists it was just a joke, noting that sitting like that can't possibly be comfortable. As Karen stays on his lap, she soon feels the discomfort in her backside and regrets not opting for the sofa. Lifia observes her and, with a smile, asks Karen if everything is going well. Karen, still red-faced, hurriedly expresses that she is not enjoying this at all. Lifia, with a smile in her eyes, replies that she never asked whether Karen was happy or not. Karen lifts her head to look at Kai and then asks why he is still wearing armor, when this is already his home, and he should be dressed more comfortably. Kai explains that it's only for safety, but the truth is he also wants to remove it. However, he feels that revealing his face to Lifia would be far too awkward, especially after their encounter at the clock tower. Since they've already met there, he thinks he needs to find a way to change the subject. To distract her, he reaches out and pats Karen on the head. Karen immediately flushes deeper and shouts for him to stop touching her and treating her like a child. Kai forcefully pushes her down and insists that she needs to move to the sofa quickly, or else her backside will continue to hurt. Karen struggles and insists that she refuses. In confusion, Kai asks why she is refusing. Observing the two of them, he comments that the Duke is quite bold to allow them to be alone with him. Lifia inquires what he means by that. Kai explains that, under normal circumstances, they should have arranged for at least one man to accompany them. Even if he saved Karen, he still doesn't know their true intentions, and in a place like this, no one can predict what might happen. Lifia smiles and says that her father is not the kind of man who acts without careful consideration. She explains that he simply deemed Kai worthy of that trust. Kai responds that he understands. Although they have barely spoken, he assumes that such judgment must stem from the Duke's extensive experience in reading people. Karen adds that they have no reason not to trust him. She reminds him that he even used a secret medicine for their benefit. Kai agrees, acknowledging her point. Lifia then suggests that, if he doesn't mind, he could join them for dinner. Kai replies that he must decline. Lifia sighs, acknowledging that he truly is a busy person. Kai agrees, saying it's more or less the case. Karen looks at him and adds that if he plans to leave the city, he should at least visit her home to say goodbye, and when he returns, he should let them know as well. Kai refuses, admitting that he is afraid of meeting the Duke. He explains that the difference in status is simply too great and that he is already dealing with too many troublesome matters. Lifia steps closer and asks him, then, to stay in the city for as long as possible. Kai lowers his head in silence, acknowledging that this is indeed a pleasant city where he intends to stay a while longer. He mentions that he may even do some sightseeing. Meanwhile, he reflects on the fact that there are still people searching for him. Across from him, Lifia sits and starts waving both hands frantically, making strange gestures. Kai tilts his head in confusion, while Karen sways hers from side to side before asking what that gesture was meant to convey. Flustered, Lifia quickly insists it was nothing. With a blank expression, Karen suggests that her sister was indicating she should try removing his helmet. In alarm, Lifia cries out Karen's name. Karen snorts and remarks that her sister can punish her later, as this is clearly her fault. She then grabs Kai's arm and suggests that if her sister is jealous, she should just admit it openly. Lifia freezes, repeating the words jealousy and disbelief, insisting that such a thing is impossible. Kai gazes at the sisters in front of him, wondering if he might be mistaken, but he feels that Lady Lafia shouldn't be involved in something like this. Karen turns to him, anger flashing in her eyes, and demands to know why he rejected her sister so bluntly. In a rush, Kai explains that it's not what it seems. He emphasizes that Lady Lafia is beautiful, of high status, and nearly an adult. Surely someone like her must already have a lover, which could lead to misunderstandings. Lafia, looking a bit uneasy, confirms that, as he mentioned, she has received many marriage proposals, but she is still single at the moment. Kai, slightly surprised, responds that he understands. Karen lets out a sigh, noting that it's always the men who withdraw first. She explains that the men fall for her sister, but after humiliating themselves, they become too embarrassed to show their faces again. Kai responds that it sounds miserable. He adds that he can understand how those men feel, because in the presence of such extraordinary beauty, it's difficult to act naturally. Karen continues by saying that her sister is actually quite clingy. Whenever she tries to grow closer to someone, that person only becomes more shy and ends up avoiding her. Lafia covers her face and pleads with Karen to stop talking, claiming it is far too embarrassing. Meanwhile, Kai looks down at Karen in his lap, thinking that she has no right to criticize anyone, while she herself is still sitting there. Karen pats the sofa and instructs Kai to try patting it like this. When Kai asks why, Karen tells him to do it without asking questions. With a sense of helplessness, Kai pats the sofa. Lafia quickly approaches and sits beside him. Karen spreads her hands and asks if he understands now. Lafia blinks and then reaches out, placing her hand over the cold black metal gauntlet of his armored hand. Karen suggests they continue their conversation in this manner. Lafia smiles and replies that she would be delighted to. Later, outside the Duke's mansion, a carriage waits quietly. Lafia smiles and expresses her gratitude, saying he was truly a great help today and that it was their honor to have him. She thanks him sincerely for the precious time he shared with them. As a final token of gratitude, she asks him to accept the family crest and explains that the matter is somewhat complicated, requiring about 3 days to complete. Once it is ready, they will personally visit him again, and at that time, they also wish to discuss the management structure of the estate. Kai replies that he understands. Karen lifts her skirt in a graceful farewell, reminding him to take care of his health until they meet again. Kai waves back, urging her to do the same and to hurry home so her parents won't worry. As the carriage slowly departs, he continues to wave and calls out his goodbye. As the carriage fades into the distance, he fondly declares that he can finally remove the helmet. He lifts off the heavy piece, revealing a young face underneath, and exhales in relief, expressing that this feels much better. After they part ways, the carriage rolls down a tree-lined road. Lafia leans inside the carriage, glancing at Karen, and remarks that time has passed so quickly. Karen expresses some regret, admitting that she wished she could stay a little longer. Lafia smiles in agreement, sharing that she feels the same way. Karen then inquires if being called a beauty feels good, especially since he even addressed her by name, which was quite thoughtful. Lafia lowers her head, blushing, and admits that perhaps it does. She confesses that after their conversation today, she's been constantly thinking about how, despite his immense fame, he remains so generous and open-minded. She wonders if only someone like him could truly be worthy of Aldi. Karen quietly agrees, suggesting that maybe that is indeed true. Benji tells her sister that the real reason she wanted to stay longer was probably to get another chance to see his face. She notes that she has never seen Lafia behave that way before. Lafia responds, saying that, after all, he is Karen's savior, and there is a strong chance he is the very person she met at the clock tower. She admits that she genuinely wanted to see his face with her own eyes. Karen tells her not to make that expression, and adds that once they return home, she can simply draw his face for her. Lafia responds awkwardly, expressing her appreciation for the thought, but noting that Karen's drawing style is far too unique to be of much use. Lafia then turns her head toward the window. Karen asks what Lafia is looking at. In the distance, Kai has taken off the heavy helmet, revealing his youthful face as he lets out a long breath of relief. Lafia stares blankly, noticing her sister's expression. Karen calls out to her. A faint smile tugs at the corners of Lafia's lips as she reflects on how that man teased her until the very end. Startled, Karen asks if he is really the same person she met at the clock tower. Lafia nods, affirming her certainty, and adds that he is truly a kind person. Even though using such a precious spiritual medicine could earn him punishment, he still chose to use it. At the same time, Kai reflects on Karen and asserts that he does not regret his decision. If it was enough to heal her leg, then it was worth it. Instead of worrying about him, she expresses her desire to see Karen live freely and happily once more. Just as she did before, her words appear to be intended to alleviate Karen's guilt and prevent her from feeling indebted. Lafia can't help but wonder if this is the mark of a truly powerful man. Perhaps his appearance at the clock tower was also for their sake, to guard against the kidnappers and watch over everyone from the shadows. If that were true, she wonders how much he had already sacrificed for them. As Kai removes the heavy helmet, he declares that it is time for a bath. Meanwhile, Lifia's thoughts continue to drift, and a faint blush spreads across her cheeks. Without seeking attention or asking for anything in return, he works alone in silence, protecting everyone around him. To her, he appears to be an incredibly admirable man. She quietly hopes that the day after tomorrow will come soon, as there is still so much she wants to say to him. Karen studies her sister, smiles, and remarks that Lafia looks just like a girl in love. Lafia expresses that, since he seems to care about her so much, she wants to grow even closer to him. She then starts to wonder what their father would think if he knew her thoughts. Resting a finger against her chin, she sinks into contemplation, imagining that, in their father's eyes, Kai might be someone too extraordinary to understand easily. She wonders how he will react. Sunlight spills across the street outside the tavern. The innkeeper folds a cloth as he speaks with a hint of sadness, expressing that the thought of not seeing Kai anymore leaves him feeling unexpectedly lonely. He adds that when Kai did not return the previous night, he sensed that this day would come. Kai cuts into the steak on his plate and calmly announces that he will no longer be living there, but he still intends to return for meals, just as he is doing now. The innkeeper observes him eating heartily and laughs, asking if Kai truly enjoys the food that much. After swallowing a bite, Kai replies that the food is genuinely excellent. The innkeeper breaks into a pleased smile, saying that hearing that makes everything worthwhile. He adds that he will keep waiting for Kai to visit again. Kai nods, expressing his gratitude. Leaning against the counter, the innkeeper asks where Kai plans to stay next. He mentions that if Kai is considering another inn, he could recommend a few good places. Kai spears another piece of meat and announces that he has acquired a house and plans to stay there for a while. The innkeeper freezes in shock and asks if Kai has really bought a house. Seated at the counter while eating, Kai explains that he kept refusing, but the Duke insisted on giving it to him. He mentions that they appeared to have searched everywhere for a suitable gift to thank him, which must have required considerable effort. The innkeeper responds with frustration, stating that this is no joke, as receiving a villa from a duke is a monumental occasion. Kai agrees, noting that it does seem quite significant. The innkeeper, irritated, clarifies that this is not what he meant. He explains that the number of villas a noble owns serves as a symbol of power, something that is beyond the imagination of ordinary people. In his view, the Duke believed that forging a connection with Kai was more valuable than preserving that symbol. Kai listens in silence. The innkeeper then asks what kind of person Kai truly is. Kai spreads his hands and replies that he is just an ordinary man. He then takes out a heavy money pouch and places it on the table, saying he nearly forgot to give it to him. He explains that it is payment in gratitude for all the care, shelter, and advice he received. The innkeeper stares at the pouch and asks what it contains. From the sound of it, he notes that it seems to be filled entirely with money. Kai pushes it toward him and confirms that it is cash. He elaborates that the innkeeper sheltered him and provided valuable advice, which truly helped him a great deal. The innkeeper waves his hands, expressing his reluctance to accept Kai's money, claiming it feels too frightening. Kai, feeling helpless, reassures him that there is nothing to fear. He admits that he is naturally stingy, but after involving the innkeeper in such chaos, he genuinely feels remorseful. The innkeeper, confused, asks what madness Kai is referring to. Kai explains that the innkeeper helped hide him from the Duke's men, and throughout that time, he was incredibly tense. The innkeeper responds that despite the circumstances, he only wanted to do his best to treat his guests well. Kai smiles and expresses that he is truly glad he chose to stay at that inn. The innkeeper proudly asks if that means the place is pretty great. Kai nods and replies that he thinks so. Suddenly, the innkeeper grows awkward and admits he was only joking. He explains that hearing such a sincere answer makes him feel embarrassed, suggesting that Kai should have denied it, or at least looked uncomfortable. Kai then puts his helmet back on. The innkeeper laughs and reminds him not to forget to return. Kai assures him that he definitely will. After turning to leave the tavern, the innkeeper picks up the money pouch, checks to ensure no one is watching, and loosens the cord. He is stunned to discover it filled with gleaming gold coins. He wonders how anyone could so casually hand over such a large sum of money, as no ordinary person would ever do that. Ironically, the same man had previously called himself stingy. Meanwhile, within one of the three great powers, the Holy Church, Nina pinches Mary's cheek and advises her not to sit with her legs crossed, warning that it might ruin her pretty face. Mary replies in a muffled voice, telling Nina to stop touching her face. Nina gazes at her sister and remarks that this must be what she truly looks like. Once blind, Nina has now regained her sight thanks to the panacea. Mary asks who Nina thinks she is and questions how many times they are supposed to repeat this same exchange. Nina calmly responds that this should be the 7th time. Mary narrows her eyes and asks if Nina is doing it on purpose. Nina turns away and insists that she would never act that way. She then adds that Mary's way of speaking is too harsh and reiterates that she should not cross her legs, as it damages her beautiful image. Mary leans back in her chair and states that taking time to relax like this every now and then shouldn't be an issue. She acknowledges that it could be problematic if someone outside the family were to see her in this state, but insists that when needed, she can behave perfectly well. She straightens her back, adopts an elegant posture, and asks Nina if she can see the difference. Nina stares at her in silence. Mary closes her eyes and tells Nina to stop looking at her that way. Ever since regaining her sight, she says, Nina has become more rigid than ever. Nina responds that she is merely stating the truth. She emphasizes that Mary's so-called occasional behavior occurs every single day. Mary counters, insisting that it does not happen daily. Nina firmly asserts that it absolutely does. Mary lets out a sigh. Ever since Nina regained her sight, she has become more vibrant than ever, savoring each day, not just today, but for the past 2 days as well. Mary notes that none of them have ever seen Nina this cheerful before. Looking at her sister, Mary remarks that the man named Kai truly did something impressive. He saved Nina all on his own, used the panacea without charge, and even went through 3 bottles in one go. Nina clutches the pendant around her neck and replies that she knows. She adds that both his appearance and his heart are flawless, exactly the type her sister would fall for. Mary smiles and asks if that also makes him Nina's type. Nina grows a bit flustered and replies that she has only just regained her sight, so she hasn't had time to develop any real taste in men. Resting her cheek on her hand, Mary says she isn't so sure about that. She believes that Nina is still too young to pursue Kai. If he can distribute holy medicine for free, then he must be Verta. If that's the case, Nina would be up against hundreds, if not thousands, of rivals. Blushing, Nina counters that her age might still give her a chance. Mary teasingly remarks that someone is getting fired up. Just then, a nun opens the door and enters, informing Lady Mary and Lady Nina that it is time for them to take over their duties. Mary smiles and assures her that they will handle it. She then turns to her younger sister and tells her that it's time to go. Nina hesitates for a moment before affirming that she understands. The devout Ansachi sisters, Nina and Mary, hold a quiet hope in their hearts for the day they will reunite with Kai. Meanwhile, Kai stands in a play of shifting light and shadow, silently awaiting his fate. 3 days later, Mary slumps across a bench expressing her exhaustion. Lafia approaches and points out that Mary has been caught slacking off again. Startled, Mary quickly responds, acknowledging Lafia's presence. She insists that she isn't slacking off, she's simply resting. She notes that it has been a long time and mentions that Lafia was not scheduled to visit that day. She also reminds her that entering the rear garden without following protocol is usually forbidden. Lafia apologizes awkwardly. Mary reassures her not to worry about it and invites her to sit down first. The two of them take a seat side by side on the bench and share a light laugh. Mary asks if Karen is not with her today and if she came alone. Lafia replies that Karen is outside talking with Nina, who is cleaning the courtyard. Mary nods, indicating her understanding, and then adds that, since the sisters have appeared again, the dupe's household must have properly expressed its gratitude to Kai. Seated on the bench, Lafia shares that she has just personally delivered her father's letter to Mary's parents, and now it's their turn. Mary sighs, noting that the meeting is finally about to happen. She explains that her younger sister has been clamoring every single day to see him because she likes him so much. Lafia responds with a hint of helplessness, saying that Karen feels the same way. Karen keeps asking if her sister is going to the villa again today. Lafia comments that Karen has finally found someone besides her to rely on, and now she practically lives on that person's lap, even when scolded, and despite her backside aching from it, she still refuses to leave. Mary smiles and wonders if Kai truly has that kind of irresistible charm. With a gentle gaze, Lafia expresses that such charm cannot be captured in words, declaring him the finest person she has ever met. Mary responds, noting that this is extraordinarily high praise. Lafia smiles, assuring her that Mary will understand as soon as she meets him. Intrigued, Mary remarks on the unusual nature of this admiration and then asks if Lafia rewarded Kai generously during their last meeting. Lafia responds with a hint of disappointment, noting that the matter is still under discussion. Mary leans in slightly and urges her to share the details anyway, if only for reference. Lafia explains that the Ansachi family has yet to decide on the form of their own gratitude, so they are interested in how the Duke's household managed it to ensure they do not give an inappropriate gift. Lafia's expression becomes serious as she warns Mary that she absolutely must not tell anyone else. She explains that if Mary lets this matter leak, she will reveal Mary's true nature. Mary quickly responds that she understands. Leaning close to Mary's ear, Lafia whispers that she must speak quietly. She explains that the reward given to Kai was a villa and a family crest symbolizing honor. Mary stares at her in disbelief and asks if that is truly all. She points out that Kai used the panacea and even saved Karen's life, insisting that such compensation is far from sufficient. Lafia replies helplessly that she feels the same way, but at the time, there was no better option available. Mary frowns and insists there must be a way to offer more. Lafia sighs and explains that Kai not only failed to ask for anything but also refused the compensation they attempted to give him. Mary throws up her hands and exclaims that such a person cannot possibly exist. With a serious expression, Lafia states that she told her from the very beginning that Kai is the most perfect person she has ever met. She adds that even her father agrees, and she feels she cannot compare to him at all. Mary expresses her surprise and asks if Lafia's father really said such a thing. Lafia explains that her father has been struggling lately, trying to prepare for their next meeting. She adds that unless he makes perfect preparations, he might not even be able to speak to Kai normally. Mary lowers her gaze and remarks that if someone like her father finds Kai so difficult to deal with, then Kai must truly be a monster. She asks if Lafia truly believes that such a man is just an ordinary player in the world. Lafia replies that her father once issued a direct order. No one under him should ever do anything that could turn that man into an enemy. Mary ponders this for a moment and then concludes that even if Lafia has her own thoughts, she cannot speak freely now. She adds that if Kai is indeed Verta, the situation becomes even more complicated, as his position may already be higher than theirs. Although she isn't entirely sure how the organization operates, a man like him should be able to obtain whatever he desires. Lafia notes that during their conversation, she felt Kai appeared more interested in money than in the Duke family's crest. Mary looks stunned and insists that it makes no sense. She argues that money can be earned through hard work, but no matter how much effort a person puts in, a Duke's family crest is not something one can casually acquire. She explains that such a crest serves as a permanent shield, a guarantee admired by everyone as long as that house continues to exist. She concludes that if Kai truly is Verta and has imperial support, it might not be surprising for him to prioritize money over a protective charm. Lafia expresses her belief that Kai was pleased because money would enable him to assist even more people in need. Mary looks on with a puzzled expression. Lafia continues, explaining that for someone struggling with finances, receiving a villa would undoubtedly bring immense joy. However, a person who cannot afford such high-quality equipment would never be able to purchase it on their own. Mary nods in agreement and concludes that their side should also prepare a more generous reward. Lafia turns and playfully teases Mary, claiming that she is certain Kai is exactly her type. Mary's face flushes bright red as she protests, demanding to know where Lafia heard such nonsense. She mentions that Nina has already said the same thing. Lafia chuckles lightly, agreeing that Nina is truly perceptive. Mary points at Lafia, declaring that she has no right to laugh since she is the one clearly showing affection for him. She warns that if Lafia continues to pretend otherwise, she will go directly to Kai and reveal that Lafia has already fallen hopelessly for him. In a panic, Lafia shouts Mary's name. Meanwhile, Nina walks along the road, excitedly expressing that she is finally going to see him. She admits that she can hardly wait. Initially, she recalls how flustered they all were because they couldn't find him anywhere. Despite having such conspicuous equipment, they still failed to track him down. She confesses that she truly feared he would be reprimanded for using the panacea. Karen raises one finger and states that if Nina feels guilty about that, Kai would surely scold her instead. She explains that rather than worrying about him, Kai would want her to embrace her newly regained freedom and fully enjoy all the things she couldn't do before. Nina looks surprised and asks if Kai really said that. She then thanks Karen, expressing that hearing this makes her feel much better. Karen continues, mentioning that Kai also said that even if he were scolded, he would never regret his choice. She adds that Kai sounded like someone who deeply dislikes being lectured. Perhaps, she speculates, he disobeyed his superior's order. Or perhaps he already knew that his actions would not lead to any real trouble. Having surely built up many merits, the organization likely wouldn't want to lose him. Nina touches her cheek and remarks that this truly sounds like him. She believes he is the kind of person who would never bow his head when he knows he is doing the right thing. She then asks if Karen knows how long Kai plans to stay in town. Karen spreads her hands and replies that Kai mentioned he still has matters to take care of, so he intends to remain for a while longer. She adds that he really seemed busy. Her sister even invited him to dinner at their home to express their gratitude, but he declined, insisting he still had important tasks to complete. Karen wonders if he is out there helping others or patrolling the town. Nina lowers her head and remarks that at night, that black armor truly allows him to blend in. She adds that it makes him appear even more impressive. Karen leans closer and shares some good news, noting that since Nina is so invested, she wants to let her in on a secret. She reveals that Kai often comes to the inn for lunch and enjoys simple, everyday food. Nina instantly leaps to her feet. From behind her, Karen calls out, asking if she is seriously planning to leave right now. Blushing, Nina replies that she is certainly not. She adds that she should at least thank him properly first. Meanwhile, Karen stays on the bench and asks if Nina plans to leave her behind. At that moment, Kai walks down the street and stops in front of a tavern. Inside, Nina inquires with the innkeeper about what time that gentleman usually arrives. The innkeeper stammers awkwardly. Nina, adopting a firmer tone, apologizes but insists that he must reveal the information. The innkeeper breaks into a cold sweat and hurriedly states that Kai usually arrives at this exact time. Meanwhile, standing outside the door, Kai thinks the innkeeper sounds as if he is being tortured. He reassures himself that he only came for a meal. Nina continues by asking what Kai usually orders. The innkeeper explains that there is no fixed menu, as Kai always adds items based on his mood. Curious, Nina inquires about what Kai ate most recently. The innkeeper points to yesterday's order and confirms that was what Kai had. Nina nods and requests the exact same dish. The innkeeper quickly agrees. Outside, Kai observes the scene, surprised to discover that the innkeeper's voice can reach such a high pitch. He notices that one of the girls appears gentle, while the other seems quite troublesome. Considering this, he decides it may be wiser not to enter today. However, pretending not to notice would make him feel like a terrible person, especially since she once held him close. Ultimately, he decides to enter first. He reasons that once other customers start arriving, the atmosphere may calm down. If he acts as if he hasn't noticed anything, perhaps he can avoid getting dragged into trouble. He suddenly wonders why everything has become so quiet at the worst possible moment. A helmeted nun assists Nina, instructing her to hold her posture. Nina, her face flushed, replies that she understands. The innkeeper glances at Kai with desperate gratitude, as if silently thanking him. Kai, looking a bit confused, expresses his desire to order food. Nina feels a wave of nervousness as she gazes at him and asks if he remembers her. Kai assures her that he does, and adds that he is relieved to see she is safe. Nina clutches the pendant at her chest and replies that she is just as glad to see he is healthy. Kai glances at the innkeeper, who is hiding behind the door, and then turns to Nina's guard. He acknowledges the guard's status and responsibilities, but explains that Nina specifically requested the innkeeper remain silent. Therefore, he asks the guard to overlook the earlier incident. The bodyguard bows and sincerely apologizes, admitting that he had been rude. The innkeeper quickly waves his hands, insisting that it is nothing at all. He even adds that he ought to be grateful. Meanwhile, Kai glances back at Nina and remarks that she seems completely different from before, even in her choice of clothing. He admits that he didn't recognize her at first. Nina proudly displays her nun's habit and asks if it suits her. Kai replies that the outfit will suit her even better once she grows a little older. Nina beams and thanks him warmly. Noticing her sleeves, Kai expresses his surprise that she is a member of the Holy Church. Nina smiles in response. Kai gestures toward his own eyes and inquires about her sight since that day. Seeing the lively energy in the girl before him, Kai realizes that she is truly fine now, and he quietly expresses his relief. Nina lowers her head and softly replies that she is now happier than anyone. For years, she explains, she could not clearly see the faces of her own family. Kai responds helplessly, saying she shouldn't suddenly bring up something so heavy. Blushing, Nina apologizes. Kai advises her to lift her head and enjoy life from this point on. Otherwise, he adds, using that medicine on her would have been meaningless. Nina smiles and assures everyone that she understands and will do her best. The innkeeper arrives with the dishes, apologizing for the wait. Nina expresses that she wanted to enjoy the same meal as Kai, which was the very reason she came that day. Kai, reflecting on this, remarks that it seems she can feel that way too. Nina nods in agreement and replies affirmatively. Kai adds that if she cannot finish the food, he and her guard will help her with it. Nina smiles and thanks him. He then asks if her time outside is limited. He remarks that it would be a shame to let freshly prepared food go cold. Nina clasps her hands together and declares that, in that case, she will start eating. As soon as she takes a bite, her face lights up with surprise, and she exclaims that it is truly delicious. Kai spreads his hands proudly and asserts that he was right, as the food here is excellent. The innkeeper, clearly annoyed, questions why Kai looks so proud when someone else is doing the cooking. In response, Kai grumbles about why only his dish was plated so poorly. He then decides to let it slide for today, given that the innkeeper nearly lost his soul from fright earlier. Nina laughs and remarks that Kai and the innkeeper seem to have a genuine bond. Kai brings his hands together and states that their relationship is decent enough. The innkeeper responds with a helpless expression, noting that Kai has never shared his background or revealed his true identity. He adds that had he known earlier, he would have kept his distance, as dealing with someone so mysterious is exhausting. Kai suddenly realizes that the innkeeper has revealed too much. He turns to Nina's guard and asks if, just this once, the man can pretend he never heard that. The guard replies that as long as Lady Nina is not angry, he can overlook it. Nina smiles and assures him that she has no intention of getting angry. Meanwhile, the innkeeper, sweating nervously, pleads for their mercy. Kai finds the innkeeper's stiff reaction amusing. The innkeeper insists that this is how any normal person would react, claiming that Kai is the true oddball. Nina then turns to Kai and says she has something she wants to ask. With her time outside limited, she hopes they can set a proper date for her to visit him formally and express her gratitude. Nina expresses her desire to set a date for a visit so she can thank him properly. As soon as Jet Black hears this, he freezes. Beneath his helmet, his eyes widen, and he stares in stunned silence, reacting with confusion. Noticing the conversation taking a serious turn, the shopkeeper awkwardly suggests that he should probably step away from the table for this one. Looking flustered, Kai nervously asks if he is supposed to be the one visiting the great cathedral. Nina quickly clarifies that it is not like that at all. She explains that she and the others will, of course, come to his estate to thank him. Jet Black then replies that this means she already knows where his estate is located. Nina bows her head and expresses that if this displeases him, they will offer a proper apology. Behind the helmet, Kai is visibly shaken. He wonders how she already has that information, considering he only received the villa recently. Kai reassures her that he is not upset, but rather impressed. He then tells Nina that if she wishes to visit, she should do so on a day off, as he has matters to attend to during the week. Nina mentions that she is aware of how busy he is and suggests meeting next Sunday around noon instead. He agrees and then inquires about who will be attending. Nina explains that her father and mother will be there, along with her elder sister, herself, and several guards. This response leaves him speechless. Under the helmet, he breaks into a cold sweat, realizing that Nina's family is far more powerful than he had anticipated. In an attempt to salvage the situation, he asks if he can choose who actually comes to the estate. When Nina inquires about his meaning, he bluntly states that he would prefer her parents not to attend. She reacts in shock, but he quickly clarifies that he is not seeking a stiff formal visit and does not want to draw even more attention. From the sidelines, the innkeeper dryly comments on the absurdity of hearing that from a man still clad in full black armor. Kai can only think, with annoyance, that the old man should cut him some slack. Kai expresses that he would honestly prefer Nina's parents to concentrate on their work, as it would be problematic if something were to happen while they are away. Even when Nina hesitates, he insists that they can still express their gratitude, regardless of whether her parents attend. He adds that high-ranking individuals like them intimidate him, and he definitely does not want to meet them. Nina cautiously inquires if that implies he doesn't trust things to proceed with only her sister present, but he quickly and forcefully denies it. At that moment, the masked guard intervenes calmly, stating that the matter is settled. Kai instructs her to relay the decision to his superiors. The guard responds that this was her intention from the start and acknowledges that the arrangement is quite beneficial. Seeing everything resolved so neatly, Kai quietly reflects that things are going surprisingly smoothly for once. After the meal concludes, Nina and her escort stand to leave. Nina politely states that they will take their leave for now and expresses her eagerness to see him again soon. Kai offers a simple farewell and watches them depart. The moment the door closes and the bell rings, all the tension drains from him. He slumps with a hand on his head and lets out a long, exhausted sigh. The innkeeper returns carrying another plate and asks if Kai is really claiming to be the tired one. He remarks that anyone would be worn out after dealing with such a group, then teasingly adds that it's ironic coming from the man who had just been speaking so casually with Kai. He concedes that perhaps it's better to say they are both tired. The innkeeper observes him closely and admits that while he already knew Kai was no ordinary person, he never imagined he was the kind of man who could stand on equal footing with the Holy Church. Kai thinks that if what he believes were true, his life would be much easier. When the innkeeper notices him staring off into the distance, he tells Kai that he can stop pretending around him. Kai then reveals that he has realized something important. Despite everything he's learned, he still hasn't changed the way he treats him. The innkeeper responds that acting normal around him would be better for both of them. Kai responds honestly, stating that it truly helps. The innkeeper then asks him not to sue or punish him later for saying something disrespectful to his superior. Kai assures him that he would never do anything like that, adding that he is in no position to use words like insult in the first place. He then mentions Nina's bodyguard, noting that she was genuinely frightening and clearly one of those top-class elites. The innkeeper agrees immediately and explains that holy guards are all elite, so someone in that role would undoubtedly be formidable. As their conversation continues, Kai mentions that from the fragments he has heard, it seems the people around him already know a great deal about him. He admits it would have been nice to learn that sooner. The innkeeper then exclaims that Kai should have mentioned this earlier, as he truly believed he was going to die. Kai offers a sincere apology. The innkeeper responds, noting that despite everything, they really went easy on him. When Kai inquires about what he means, the innkeeper explains that they never attempted to crush him with their status or threaten him. He notes that they continued to ask politely, and he realizes that while he was occupying Nina's already limited free time, the guards still needed to ensure she ate properly and stayed on schedule. From that perspective, he believes their firm attitude was entirely understandable. The masked guard's stern demeanor lingers in his mind, prompting the innkeeper to reflect that such individuals demonstrate their loyalty through that very discipline. Kai comments that this seems like a difficult position for the bodyguard, akin to the pain of someone caught in the middle. He adds that serving those in power is likely challenging for anyone in that role, and that he, of all people, should understand this better than most. The innkeeper mentions that he heard Kai was the one who spoke up about public image and status, while others were defending someone's side. Kai admits, almost helplessly, that he doesn't truly understand that world and only said whatever sounded right at the moment. In response, the innkeeper points out that this only proves Kai lives in a position where he doesn't have to worry about such matters. When the innkeeper wonders aloud if that means Kai is above some major church authority, Kai quickly denies it, stating that the truth is quite the opposite. He explains that he is so far beneath people like that he cannot even begin to comprehend their world. Finally, the innkeeper cuts off the conversation, declaring that this is enough and that the discussion is over. Kai protests, asking to explain a bit more, but inwardly he groans, realizing that the misunderstandings surrounding him are only getting worse. Meanwhile, outside in the carriage, the masked guard tells Lady Nina that she is glad to have seen Kai after all. Nina quietly admits that she had truly hoped to sit at the same table and share a meal with him, expressing her soft happiness that, because of this, she feels very pleased. In the carriage, Nina turns to her masked escort and asks if she can pose a question. She then inquires about what kind of person Kai appeared to be from her perspective. The escort responds first by asserting that, without a doubt, he is a powerful man. Nina gently clarifies that she is referring to his nature rather than his strength. The escort apologizes and explains that he has been under constant watch the entire time, leaving him no opportunity to consider that. Nina is taken aback by the answer, and as she quietly repeats the phrase to herself, the escort explains that people tend to lower their guard while eating. She assumes that she was being observed to ensure her vigilance had not faltered. The escort then adds that, as Nina's security detail, they already bear the heavy burden of having once allowed Nina to be kidnapped, and on top of that, they failed to detect Kai as well. She considers that unforgivable. Although they had spoken with the shopkeeper, she never treated it as an excuse to lower her guard. Nina wonders if Kai might simply have an unusually faint presence, but the escort immediately dismisses that idea, insisting that the difference lies in skill. Even so, she thanks Nina for her concern. She then suggests that Kai may have anticipated her clash with the shopkeeper. To her, the timing and the entire sequence of events feel too precise to be mere coincidence. Nina falls silent as the escort continues, stating that either Kai already knew they were heading to that inn, or he possesses an extraordinary ability to assess situations. She admits that she can't stop thinking about what he truly meant by his words, and says she will report everything to Nina's father as well. Nina then asks if she is referring to the part about the thanks, and the escort notes that Nina noticed it too. She explains that a man in Kai's position would never normally pass up the opportunity to meet Nina's parents, especially when he has the chance to be owed a favor. She suggests that, although he claimed to dislike drawing attention, that was likely just a pretext. Nina realizes that this explanation makes sense. The escort notes that while many claim to dislike interacting with the powerful, Kai's natural demeanor with Nina contradicts that notion. She also mentions rumors connecting him to Vertar, suggesting he is likely already familiar with navigating relationships with influential individuals. After a heavy silence, Nina reluctantly admits that she hates to say it, but perhaps some trouble is brewing at the Grey Cathedral. She acknowledges that she cannot be certain, but knowing Kai, there must be an important reason behind his request, as he is not someone who would make such a demand over something trivial. The escort immediately agrees and suggests they consult Nina's father as soon as possible. She apologizes and asks if she can tell the driver to hurry. Nina agrees, and the carriage speeds on. Later, at the mansion, Nina's elder sister sits with her and nervously comments that being personally requested by him still means a lot. Then, half flustered, she blurts out that Kai really does have good taste. Nina immediately notices that her sister's voice is shaking and quietly points it out, also observing that her legs seem to be trembling. Embarrassed, her sister stammers that she simply hadn't expected him to go so far as to specifically say he didn't want their parents to come along just to offer thanks. She acknowledges that, given all the discussions about Vertar and everything related to him, she understands the burden he carries. Nina gently reassures her sister that everything will be fine and emphasizes that Kai is truly a wonderful person. She adds that he is as generous as her sister herself. This leads her to consider that perhaps visiting him as her true self would be acceptable after all. Nina responds that it would likely be fine, but her sister immediately recoils in alarm at the idea. Confused, Nina insists that it's much easier to just be oneself. However, her sister argues that good impressions typically stem from a polished version of a person, reminding herself that it is this refined persona that often garners admiration. Nina warmly responds that she prefers the real her better. Her sister is touched by this and promises to take those words to heart. As their conversation unfolds, the elder sister reflects on how incredible Kai truly is. She notes that he was the first to notice suspicious movements around the inn and consistently stayed one step ahead in Alia. Based on his apparent busyness, she believes he must be investigating various matters behind the scenes. Nina wonders how he gathers such information, but her sister insists it's better for them not to know. To her, these matters are clearly top secret. She warns that if they dig too deep, he might start seeing them as enemies, and in the worst-case scenario, he could decide they aren't worth the trouble and cut ties completely. Her thoughts grow darker as she concludes that, no matter how one looks at it, Kai is a complete monster in the most overwhelming sense. She even suggests that, for all they know, he could be listening to their conversation right now. Nina tries to dismiss this idea, insisting that there are guards at the entrance, so there's no way something like that could happen. At that exact moment, both of them hear footsteps from above, the sound echoing from the ceiling itself. Nina stiffens and nervously calls out to her sister. Her sister forces a shaky smile and suggests it must be some kind of animal, reminding Nina of a time when an animal got onto the roof, assuring her that it's probably just that again. Even so, Nina cannot fully settle down. She feels that, given the timing, everything still seems a bit too strange. Yet, her thoughts drift back to Kai, and she quietly reflects on his kindness. She imagines that he might even be watching over them just in case something happens. When she glances toward the entrance and recalls that guards are stationed at the main gate, she realizes how impossible that scenario is and falls silent. Then, the long-awaited day arrives. Kai returns to the inn, and the innkeeper remarks that if he were in Kai's position, he wouldn't have had the time to venture out so calmly. Anyone in his place would have been replaying the entire meeting in their mind without pause. After expressing that he understands the feeling, Kai thanks the innkeeper for the meal. Inwardly, he reminds himself that today, the ruling Ansash household of the Holy Church is coming to see him. He reassures himself that he has at least succeeded in keeping Nina's powerful parents from attending. He tells himself that he has rehearsed the first meeting in his head perfectly. However, one thing still worries him: speaking with Nina's sister for the first time. To ease his anxiety, he decides that if things become difficult, he will leave everything to Nina. Satisfied with this plan, he praises it as perfect. With one hand on his head, he reveals to the innkeeper that the real reason for his visit on such an important day is that something has been troubling him. The innkeeper notices his demeanor and inquires if something is bothering him. Kai then explains that recently, Duke de Goat assigned a resident maid to manage the estate on his behalf. Reflecting on the maid's stiff and distant behavior, he admits that her reluctance to engage has made the entire situation feel strangely lonely. The innkeeper listens and expresses his sympathy, saying he feels sorry for her and acknowledges the huge responsibility she carries. Upon hearing this, Kai falls silent, staring blankly ahead. He reflects that after being scolded by Nina's bodyguard, the shopkeeper likely no longer feels any pity for him. As he surveys the bustling scene, he observes that the place has become much busier and comments that there seem to be more staff now. The shopkeeper cheerfully replies that it's all thanks to him. He explains that after Kai began dining there and Lady Nina visited as well, word spread throughout the town, and now everyone wants to enjoy the same dishes that Lady Nina enjoyed. Kai reflects on Nina's undeniable popularity. The shopkeeper notes that ever since she regained her sight, Nina has been appearing in public more frequently, and what looks like hers, it's only natural to attract attention. Kai quietly agrees, thinking that despite her youth, it's clear to anyone that she is destined to become a true beauty. The shopkeeper then recalls that he has something else for Kai and asks if he has heard about the new religious group that has suddenly emerged and begun challenging the holy church Nina serves. Upon hearing this, Kai realizes that this must be the information the man had been preparing in advance, and he thinks it sounds like a matter of significant importance. He asks if the rumor originated from a customer. The shopkeeper confirms it did and explains that people are spreading stories about archbishops and bishops engaging in wicked deeds. He adds that they are feeding nonsense to believers to incite division within the Holy Church, clearly aiming to undermine the Osage family's influence. Kai reflects that being linked to power must be exhausting, especially if it constantly leads to trouble like this. The innkeeper responds that Kai's reaction is understandable, as there's no way he wouldn't have already sensed the kind of things even he can pick up. Kai then asks what the innkeeper would have done if he had claimed not to know. The innkeeper mentions that he would likely have offered one of those vague, agreeable responses. Kai asks what he means by that, then shifts his focus back to the rumor, asserting that the Holy Church should be capable of managing a situation like this. In his mind, he reasons that they are not the type to remain passive without taking action, nor would they allow their prestige to diminish so easily. The shopkeeper expresses that he wishes he could believe that as well, but the situation genuinely seems chaotic. He notes that for something that appeared out of nowhere, it has gained significant momentum. Kai dismisses his concerns, assuring him that everything will be fine in the end because the Holy Church still wields power and influence. The innkeeper eyes Kai and questions whether he has been pulling strings behind the scenes. Kai denies it, but the innkeeper's expression prompts him to ask what that look means. The innkeeper replies that he simply doesn't buy Kai's innocent act. Kai laughs awkwardly and responds that, regardless, he has learned some very useful things. He decides to ask Nina about it as well to see what she knows. The shopkeeper agrees, noting that it's probably for the best since people like them would be more willing to speak to Kai than to him, as they don't trust him very much. He then states that today's bill will be 10,000 rejoules, which includes an information fee. The innkeeper protests, claiming that Kai is being ridiculous for charging him, as he only repeated things Kai likely already knew. Since Kai brought Lady Nina to the shop, his meals will be complimentary for a while. Startled, Kai asks if the shopkeeper is serious. The shopkeeper warmly encourages him not to be shy and to come by again. Gratefully, Kai responds that this really helps him a lot. As he departs, he reflects that, as expected, doing good truly brings good back in return. When the day of Nina's visit arrives, the resident maid greets him. She asks if he really needs to wear armor when meeting Lady Nina and her elder sister. Kai replies that it's just a precaution, as one can never know what might happen. The maid then reveals that even if a fight were to break out, he is rumored to be stronger, even without weapons. This makes Kai freeze in surprise. He quickly asks where she got that information. The maid calmly responds that it came from Lord Dagoat, and assures him that the matter is strictly internal, so there's no need to worry about it spreading. Kai inwardly relaxes, grateful that he kept his armor on as it conceals his face. However, he also acknowledges that this maid has recently become someone who intimidates him a bit. To shift the conversation, Kai awkwardly inquires if the maid will be the one to show Nina and the others around. The maid assures him that she can handle it and asks where they should be escorted first. Kai inwardly grumbles that being put on the spot only complicates matters, then suggests either the study or the drawing room. The maid responds that both options are fine, so Kai decides on the study. As he watches her, he quietly reflects on how much he envies her calm and composed demeanor. The topic of the accompanying guards arises, and the maid mentions that they will likely enter with Nina's party. She then asks what should be done about that situation. After a moment of thought, Kai suggests it might be better for them to wait outside the study, as he prefers not to hold a meeting under their constant watch. The maid agrees that this is acceptable. Kai then adds that the guards can move freely around the mansion, as they would likely just end up getting bored otherwise. The suggestion clearly surprises the maid, who asks if Kai is sure about it. Kai inquires whether that would be a problem. The maid replies that it wouldn't be an issue, stating that as long as Kai is okay with it, everything is fine. Noticing her reaction, Kai realizes the maid seems shaken and quietly hopes this isn't a bad sign. While waiting for Nina and her sister to arrive, Kai mentions that he has been considering sharing some of the treats Karen brought when she delivered the family seal. He then asks the maid if she thinks they are good. The maid, caught off guard, asks for clarification, but after a moment she responds that she sees no problem with it. Kai immediately agrees and then asks how much a box of those sweets costs, as he wants to buy them again. The maid replies that she isn't certain of the exact price, but estimates it to be around 50,000 regal. That figure hits him like a shock, and he stares in disbelief at the thought of spending 50,000 regal on sweets. Still rattled, he inquires about the ring with the gem that he was given as well. The maid admits she doesn't know the exact price either, but estimates it to be somewhere between 5 and 10 million regal. Kai can only fall silent in response. Noticing his reaction, the maid asks if he finds the reward insufficient, offering to subtly relay his concerns to the Duke. Kai quickly denies this, insisting that it's nothing of the sort. He explains that what overwhelms him is the thought of people giving away such expensive items so casually, and he inwardly wonders if he truly comes across as someone so greedy. The maid reassures him that he does not, and clarifies that Lord de Goat simply instructed her to contact him immediately if anything arose. Kai then reflects that Lord de Goat indeed has a great deal to worry about. The maid explains that this is simply how a noble maintains his honor. Suddenly, Kai asks if there is anything the maid herself desires. When she reacts with confusion, he adds that he would feel guilty receiving gifts all the time, and wants to give something back to her as well. The maid gently protests, stating that she is merely an employee, and that Lord de Goat compensates her more than fairly, so he should not trouble himself on her behalf. Kai steps closer and tells her not to be so stiff, encouraging her to simply share what she likes. After a moment of hesitation, the maid quietly admits that she enjoys sweets. Kai's face brightens as he responds that sweets are easy to come by, promising to bring her plenty next time. She gratefully accepts his offer. He then tells her that he has things to do in the study, so she should stick to the plan once the guests arrive. The maid replies that she understands. As Kai walks away, she considers informing Lord de Goat about this as well. At the same time, she reflects that Kai's casual, almost overly direct manner of speaking is precisely what she would expect from someone associated with Vertar. Before long, the visit begins. The maid welcomes Lady Marie and Lady Nina, expressing her gratitude for their attendance despite their busy schedules. As the guests are led inside, Nina's bodyguard remarks that she did not expect to find the maid still serving there. The maid reveals that when the villa was gifted away, she feared for her position, but that gentleman took her circumstances into consideration. The bodyguard expresses surprise at this point, while the maid responds that, knowing Kai, he could have easily assigned someone much more capable to take her place. She adds that she has never met Kai's former staff or had any direct dealings with him, so she has no basis for judging her own abilities in comparison. The bodyguard reminds her that their focus should be on him, not on her. The maid concurs, noting that if they continue this way, they'll only end up going in circles. The bodyguard nods in agreement. Together, they conclude that Kai is a secretive man who reveals very little about himself, and those around him have already been instructed not to pry too deeply. As they continue walking, the bodyguard remarks that it must be challenging to have a man like that as the master of the house. The maid admits that, in truth, she has probably spoken with him the most, and even Lord Degov himself once bowed his head to him. She mentions that there are no guards stationed anywhere on the estate because Kai personally stated there was no need for them, explaining that having guards everywhere would only create a stuffy atmosphere. Another servant expresses disbelief at this point, while the maid confirms that it is indeed what he said. The bodyguard interprets this attitude to mean that if anyone wants to confront Kai, he can simply let them come, as he clearly has the ability to handle the situation. The maid quietly acknowledges that, even without guards, being in his territory is as safe as it gets. The bodyguard then jokes that she should be careful not to let such a relaxed atmosphere upset her stomach with stress. Shortly after, the bodyguard shifts the conversation and says she would like to confirm something one more time. She inquires if it's true that they are free to spend their time as they wish until Nina and Marie finish their meeting with Kai. The maid confirms that this is precisely what she was instructed to convey. The bodyguard then seeks the maid's opinion, noting that since she lives with him every day, she might have some insight into what he truly meant. The maid expresses that she cannot take responsibility for mere speculation, yet she is willing to share her thoughts. She believes he did not mean they were free to rest idly inside the mansion. In her opinion, that was never the main point. She reminds the bodyguard that protecting Nina remains her top priority, and that there's no way Kai intended for her to abandon that responsibility. She explains that assigning the guards to a fixed waiting room could hinder their reactions and prevent them from performing their duties effectively. To her, Kai's suggestion to do as they liked meant they should act according to their own abilities and judgment. The bodyguard reflects on this interpretation and responds that, if that's the case, he doesn't truly rely on them at all. The maid interjects, clarifying that it's not a matter of trust. She believes he wants them to become self-reliant, not to depend on his help. In her view, he is compelling them to confront a harsh reality. He will not always be there to save them. She emphasizes that if they wish to protect the smiles of those they serve, they must cultivate that mindset on their own. Finally, she admits that this is just her guess, but she believes it to be the most likely explanation. The bodyguard sincerely thanks her and requests that she pass on his gratitude to Kai as well. Meanwhile, Kai sits in the study feeling baffled once again. Inwardly, he grumbles that he is merely stating ordinary things and suggesting that people relax if they wish, so he cannot comprehend why everyone continues to react as if he means something deeper. He questions whether there is anything rude about his comments at all, ultimately deciding that it is they who are acting strangely. Finally, Nina and Marie take their seats across from him. Marie apologizes and expresses that she wants to ask him just one thing. She clarifies that she is referring to how she should adjust her future behavior around him. Kai stares at her in confusion, trying to understand what exactly she is asking. Nina confirms that this is what her sister means, but that doesn't help him at all. He inwardly groans, wondering what Marie is even talking about. In silent desperation, he looks toward Nina, silently asking what he's supposed to do. By the end, he is practically begging for someone to help him. Kai sits across from the two sisters and cautiously points out that there seems to be a misunderstanding, as he is not seeing anything clearly. Marie and Nina stare at him in silence. He attempts to lighten the mood by explaining that he only meant for them to take things easy, adding that they haven't even reached the main topic yet. Marie fidgets nervously, while Nina warns her sister that if she continues to act that way, it will be detrimental to her dignity. Meanwhile, Kai panics internally, fearing that the entire atmosphere will collapse if this continues. In an attempt to escape, he remarks that if Marie believes the situation threatens her dignity, then perhaps it truly is problematic. Nina looks taken aback, while Marie lets out a sigh, confessing that she has concealed this from everyone until now. Suddenly, she relaxes, leans back, and expresses that she feels better. Kai freezes as Marie shifts from a stiff, refined lady into someone much more casual. She urges him to take her at her word and relax, but asks him not to call her rude. In that moment, Kai realizes this is the true Marie beneath the surface. Marie attempts to steer the conversation back to the main topic and express her gratitude, but Kai interrupts her, wanting to postpone any discussion about rewards. Instead, he raises the issue of a new religious group that has clashed with the Holy Church and inquires if everything is all right. Nina, pleased by his concern, expresses her thanks, leaving him puzzled. She mentions that they can discuss thanks at any time, but would prefer to explain this first. Marie states that they have prepared sufficient measures for everything they can reasonably anticipate. Nina adds that they are not naive. They understand that the enemy is attempting to tarnish the Holy Church's reputation. They decided to lure the group out before it could grow stronger. Kai remarks that what started as a casual conversation has somehow turned into a full strategy meeting. Nina explains that they leaked information indicating the entire Ansage family would be away from the great cathedral today. With the enemy becoming more active lately, there's a good chance they will make their move now. She adds that no Ansage has ever completely abandoned the church, so if the lie spreads today, it presents the enemy's best chance to attack. Kai understands and asks if their parents are still at the cathedral with extra guards. Nina confirms that they are. He reassures her that they will probably be fine. With that preparation in place, even if the enemy does not act today, staying vigilant should help them get through it. He adds that anyone who does bad things always pays eventually, then asks them to thank their parents for all their hard work. Marie and Nina fall silent, stunned by the unexpected praise. Marie awkwardly repeats his words, and Nina follows suit. Kai smiles, saying they only need to pass the message along. Meanwhile, at the cathedral, exhausted church members sit slumped on the floor. They worry that if they do not show their faces, their reputation may suffer even more, but they admit they have chosen to trust his words. A senior churchman adds that they understand they must wait. One man clenches his fist, thinking the situation is ridiculous. He believes that no one could see that far ahead, and that such a person should not exist. Yet this mysterious Kai has only appeared recently, which makes him even more uneasy. At the great cathedral, several guards stand posted near the entrance, tense but doubtful. One of them wonders how Kai could possibly have obtained so much information. He violently insists that the man is only stating things that sound plausible and obvious. Time passes inside the quiet cathedral. The skeptical guard stands alone in the bright hall, thinking that nothing is going to happen. To him, sitting there feels like a complete waste of time. His frustration mounts until he can only conclude that the entire situation is absurd. An hour later, nothing has changed. He observes the other guard standing in place and reflects that this is precisely how it always unfolds. He thinks they should stop wasting time and return to their actual duties. Another half hour ticks by. He paces with irritation, convinced that enough is enough and that there is no longer any point in continuing. 2 hours later, Nina's parents remain calm. Her father reviews documents while her mother quietly sips tea. However, the guard's patience finally snaps. He clenches his teeth, believing they are finished there, that the entire situation is pointless and should come to an end. At that moment, a man bursts in with an urgent report. The guard spins around in shock as the man announces that they have received word of a new religious group approaching the cathedral, carrying placards. He warns that they may be planning a demonstration at the entrance, or even attempting to seize the building. The atmosphere shifts instantly. Nina's father stands up, takes the report, and instructs the first and second security units to shift from the exit to the right side of the entrance. He then commands the third and fourth units to move to the left side without delay, declaring that the enemy is responsible for all the shameful acts and that not a single one must be allowed to escape. He raises his voice and orders everyone inside the cathedral to assemble at the entrance immediately. He declares that they will stand before the attackers and publicly refute each of their claims, making everyone present a witness. The guards respond in unison. The skeptical guard stands frozen as the others rush past him. His face pales as he realizes that everything Kai predicted has come true. Meanwhile, at Kai's mansion, he sits across from Nina and Marie, with piles of treasure displayed between them. He struggles to find the right words and admits that it's hard to express, but he genuinely feels he doesn't need such a large reward. Nina quickly urges him not to say that and asks him to accept it. Marie adds that if he refuses, it will create a challenging situation for them as well. Kai stiffens, realizing that their predicament also places him in a difficult position. As they bow and plead with him, he becomes even more flustered. Marie observes him and realizes that he genuinely has no intention of taking everything for himself. Remembering what Lafia said, she finds his attitude almost frightening. Marie reflects on how he risked himself to save Nina, yet he still behaves as if the reward is too much to accept. She struggles to comprehend how he can be so indifferent. Kai leans back against a large chest, feeling overwhelmed. He admits that he cannot accept everything because it is simply too much for him. He then points to a chest of gold and a sealed item, stating that those are the only two things he can accept. He insists that he cannot accept anything more because receiving too much genuinely frightens him. Nina and Marie fall silent in shock, struggling to comprehend his feelings. After a moment, Kai shifts the conversation slightly and asks Nina if her parents still plan to visit him again to express their gratitude. Nina replies that they do and that it has already been arranged. Kai visibly panics. Marie notices his reaction and wonders if he is starting to lose his composure. She questions whether there might be a problem with their parents coming, lowering his guard just enough to speak more seriously. Kai states that he wants to make two things clear. First, he insists that this reward is already more than enough as a thank you. Second, he cannot accept any more favors on top of this. In other words, there is no need for their parents to come. The sisters hesitate, and Kai continues, explaining that he understands they may want to maintain appearances, positions, and proper courtesy, but he does not intend to accept any further expressions of gratitude. As a result, he believes their parents should prioritize other matters. Marie expresses her confusion about this idea. Kai explains that their parents are not the type of people who can afford to waste time. He insists they must have important tasks to attend to, though he privately acknowledges he has no clue what those tasks might be. Nina and Marie look at him, both questioning what kind of person he truly is. Kai expresses that if their visit is destined to be a wasted trip, he would prefer they dedicate their time to something more beneficial for the town. He explains that the reason he is not accepting all the money is that it would be better utilized elsewhere rather than spent on himself. He adds that the more meaningfully they use it, the more it serves as a genuine expression of gratitude toward him. As the Holy Church grows stronger, the protection he receives from their seal also intensifies. The sisters fall into stunned silence, taken aback by how he transforms a personal reward into something that benefits others. After a moment, Marie lowers her gaze and expresses her understanding. She promises that, in that case, they will put whatever he has returned to good use. Nina looks at her in surprise and calls out to her sister, startled by how quickly Marie accepts his words. Marie lets out a small sigh and explains that it cannot be helped, as this is what Kai wants. Hearing this, Kai quietly responds that it truly helps. Marie then reflects that his proposal feels less like simple repayment and more like a collaboration to improve their situation. In her mind, Marie recalls Lifia's earlier words. Lifia had remarked that he seemed happier about the money than the family seal, and she had speculated that this was because the money would allow him to help more people in need. Before teasing that he was exactly Marie's type, she wished he would simply lend that power directly to the Holy Church. The memory makes Marie flush bright red. Embarrassed, she scolds herself internally for making everything feel awkward. Then, Kai says that before they leave, there is one more thing he wants to give Nina. He reaches out and places something in her hands. Nina looks down and asks if it is a key. He confirms that it is, explaining that it is the key to this house. Nina gasps in shock as Kai spreads his hands and explains that, as they can see, he cannot fully utilize such a large space. He encourages them to feel free to come by any time, whether together or alone. If anything ever comes up, still stunned, Nina asks if he is truly sure about this. Kai calmly responds that he has already given the same access to the Duke's daughters. He adds that they can use the place as a meeting spot or simply come by to relax. This leaves Nina momentarily speechless, but she quickly overflows with gratitude, thanking him enthusiastically. Watching this unfold, Marie is left dumbfounded. She thinks that even if he has too much space, giving away keys so casually is unbelievable. She suspects that if Lafayette truly received a spare key as well, then she likely kept it a secret from everyone. While Nina remains overwhelmed, Kai turns to Marie and calls her name. Startled, she responds nervously. He then speaks more gently, reassuring her that she doesn't need to hold herself back. He tells her to relax, adding that he actually prefers her just the way she is now. This catches Marie completely off guard. She stammers out a shy thank you while inwardly panicking and wondering why he would say something like that. Nina immediately beams and declares that it is wonderful for her sister. Flustered, Marie quickly tells Nina to be quiet. Shortly after, the sisters leave the mansion. As they stand before their carriage, they politely thank the maid for all her help that day. The maid bows deeply and wishes them a safe journey home. Once the carriage rolls away, she turns and heads back inside. As she walks down the corridor, she reflects that a place like this is typically somewhere she would never want to be involved. However, she reminds herself that this situation concerns a man who even lured Goat when he was at his wit's end, so she cannot afford to make even the slightest mistake. After steadying herself, she knocks and asks to come in. Kai grants her permission. She enters and expresses her hope that the meeting went well, then informs him that Lady Marie and Lady Nina have departed. He thanks her for taking the time to tell him. As she looks at him, the maid thinks he appears a bit worn out, though she wonders if that is just her imagination. She then asks if he kept that armor on for the entire conversation. Kai replies that he did need it. The maid acknowledges this, but inwardly she wonders if she were a bit smarter, she might fully understand what he meant by needing it. Kai then casually mentions that he gave both of them keys to the house as well, telling her that if they happen to drop by, she can handle things from there. The maid accepts the instruction and assures him that she understands. He then inquires if she is surprised. The maid replies that she is not, explaining that as the sisters were leaving, Nina was practically glowing. She recounts how Nina eagerly inserted the key into the lock, happily opening and closing the door repeatedly, while Marie attempted to stop her. Hearing this, Kai smiles and comments that Nina is still very much her age in that regard. The maid then adds that Lady Marie also expressed a high opinion of him. She mentions that Marie even said she wanted to visit again soon. Kai responds honestly, expressing his happiness at her words, even if they might just be flattery. The maid quietly remarks that she doubts it is mere flattery, as she has never seen Lady Marie behave that way before. Kai reflects that perhaps Marie is simply relieved to have finally completed the family's expressions of gratitude, especially at her age, when she has been acting as their representative. She suggests that perhaps some of his words had moved her after all, but he quickly dismisses the idea, insisting that there's no way that could be true. The maid gives him a suspicious look, and when he notices, he questions her expression. She replies that she means nothing by it. She explains that if he can handle Lord the Goat so easily, it's hard not to believe he could do the same with others. Kai stares at her in confusion, before admitting that he genuinely wishes he had that much composure. The maid looks at him and remarks that such a casual response is clear proof of his true feelings. She quietly reflects on how Kai spoke to the still young Ansoj sisters with gentle words that put them at ease. Yet, when he interacted with Duke de Goat, who was already in distress, he seemed to flip a switch, using mercilessly sharp words instead. Reflecting on that contrast, she can only pray he never flips that same switch on her. As she gazes at the return tokens laid out before her, she reminds herself that she must quickly adapt to both the atmosphere of this mansion and the peculiar values of its master. Ultimately, she can only conclude that he is truly something else. Meanwhile, after leaving the mansion, Marie excitedly asks Nina if she heard what Kai told her. She shares that he said he liked her better the way she truly is, adding happily that no man has ever said that to her before. Nina, looking uneasy, warns her sister that if she doesn't lower her voice, everyone outside will hear. Marie, flushed and delighted, assures everyone that it's fine and that this much is okay. As she watches her, Nina reflects on how, before meeting Kai, Marie had been shaking like a leaf, but now she seems completely transformed. Marie quickly turns the conversation around, pointing out that it was Nina who kept happily clacking the front door key over and over. After that, Marie extends her hand and tells Nina to hand over the key so she can keep it safe. Nina immediately refuses. Marie insists that this isn't the time to be stubborn, but Nina stands firm, stating that the key is something Kai entrusted to her. Marie sighs and replies that if Nina ever loses it, she will be taking full responsibility. She warns that while Nina may appear reliable, she can be surprisingly scatterbrained. Nina falls silent, and Marie firmly adds that losing something like that would not be amusing. Once she calms down, Marie admits that Kai is actually quite terrifying. She explains that he saw straight through her polite facade in an instant, and for a moment, she truly believed she had been caught. She wonders what kind of insights a man like that must have. Nina reminds her that their father explicitly stated that if it was Kai, it would be no surprise if he saw through her. Marie acknowledges this, but admits she had still been half convinced it couldn't really be true. She adds that if their father hadn't ordered her to comply with him under pressure, she would have certainly left a terrible impression as a daughter of House Ansage. Nina asks to clarify whether she gave Kai any reason to be suspicious. Marie assures her that she did not, and that she carried herself perfectly. However, Marie expresses that something feels off. She points out that Kai had very detailed information about the new religious group, and wonders if he somehow possesses all the intelligence in town. As she reflects on the situation, she begins to suspect that the anonymous person who leaked information about the group may have been Kai himself. Nina remembers that Kai had mentioned he chose to remain anonymous because he couldn't take responsibility if he turned out to be wrong, and that was the only explanation he provided. Marie points out that the fact he never removed that armor seems suspicious. Nina agrees, recalling that their father is thinking along the same lines. She remembers him considering the day's events as part of a larger plan to lure the enemy out. Nina adds that if a man with that much information believes it's better for their parents to stay away, then something significant must surely be happening. Marie hesitates and remarks that if he truly knew everything so accurately, he must have been sneaking around behind the scenes. She then points out that he hasn't even been in town for that long. To her, that seems impossible. Nina reminds her that he had already been sneaking around when he saved her. Still, she insists there's no way he would go that far just for them, especially since he already seems so incredibly busy. As they reflect on the treasure they tried to give him, Nina wonders that if he truly had put in that much effort for them, what kind of saint he must be. Marie adds that if he had really gone that far, they should have pushed harder to give him the family treasure. However, Nina insists that Kai is not the kind of person who would accept that kind of reward. Marie can only admire him more, thinking that he is genuinely so cool. Noticing her sister's flushed face, Marie gently tells her that she was truly saved by a very good person. Nina mentions that she has told Marie repeatedly, but Marie confesses that she is only now coming to that realization once more. As their carriage continues on its way, they observe unusual activity near the cathedral. Marie peers out, curious about what is happening over there. Nina, feeling nervous, admits that she is scared, but Marie reassures her, urging her not to worry and trying to calm her down. A guard reports the situation, and another explains that, thanks to a solid plan prepared in advance, they successfully resolved the issue with the new religious group without allowing any false rumors to spread. The sisters react with surprise. When they return, their parents question them sharply, asking why they brought the gifts back and why they returned with the spare keys. Marie can only respond awkwardly as the interrogation continues. She faces her parents and tells them that she understands how they both feel. After all their preparation, countless simulations, and successfully managing the new religious group incident without allowing false rumors to tarnish their reputation, they wanted to express their gratitude to Kai in the best possible way. However, Marie clenches her fist and insists that there was simply no way to do that with him. She acknowledges that they might consider it an excuse, but she believes it is truly impossible. He saw through her act instantly, as if she had been dancing in the palm of his hand the entire time. She admits that no one can win an argument against someone who appears to have everything under control. Her father lowers his gaze and apologizes, saying that if Marie feels that way, then he has no choice but to believe her. Marie responds that it's not as if they didn't see this coming. She notes that Kai truly had them under his thumb. Then she asks if, after hearing her full report, they still intend to impose more gratitude on him. Her mother smiles and confirms that this is still the plan. Marie quietly notes that Kai anticipated this outcome and still spoke his mind. She recalls him saying there was no need for their parents to come, as he didn't intend to accept any more gratitude, and believed their visit would only waste time. When her father asks if he truly said that, Marie swears to the gods that he did. She explains that they had tried to show sincerity as house and sage, but Kai told them there were more important matters for their parents to attend to. He insisted that instead of wasting time on him, they should focus on something that would benefit the town more. He also explained that as they grew stronger, the seal's protection would become more powerful as well. Her father realizes that in their current state, the Ounsage family seal is not truly beneficial to him. Nina tries to view this positively, noting that he is essentially encouraging them to become strong enough to assist him in the future. Marie reflects that now they understand why they couldn't express their gratitude perfectly. She merely echoed what he had told her, yet it was enough to convince both of them. This realization leads her to believe he possesses an almost unsettling foresight. It seemed to her that he was suggesting if they were genuinely ready to demonstrate sincerity, then this task should be simple for them. In the end, Marie acknowledges that they were unable to give him everything they had hoped for, but they did find a way to express their gratitude that both sides could accept. Her father assures her that he understands and praises her for her efforts. Her mother also expresses her appreciation for what Marie has done. Then, Marie recalls one more thing. Kai asked her to thank both of them for all their hard work. The two parents freeze in silence, stunned. In their minds, Kai looms as a terrifyingly reliable figure who sent their daughters home just as everything was coming to a close. Her mother quietly reflects that he is the last person she would ever want to make an enemy of. Given someone like that, she remarks that it's no wonder he belongs to Vertar and likely holds a significant position there. Suddenly, Marie inquires whether they have any information about the mastermind behind it all. Her mother explains that all the information gathered from the captured members has already been relayed through the town's channels. She mentions that the mastermind will likely attempt to flee the city. Marie, surprised, asks if they aren't going to catch him. Her father explains that it's not that they are doing nothing. The issue is that the enemy might seek revenge on ordinary believers or even on Kai himself. Because of this, completely sealing off his escape route isn't the wisest strategy. In the shadows of the mastermind's network, red threads connect faces, plans, and Kai's image.